On a bright sunny day in the Roman Empire, the streets are alive with celebration. A chariot carries a bride and groom to the church, and by the time the priest pronounces them husband and wife, the whole place erupts. Music, food, drinks, the works. But our bride is not exactly feeling the festive mood. Her name is Lariella Dalaleu, now Duchess Lariella Elmano, and she is sitting through all of this absolutely starving. She whispers to her personal maid, Marie, that she feels like she is dying of hunger. Marie tells her she absolutely cannot eat yet. Lariana asks if she can just have one piece of lamb. Marie says no. Our girl calls her too strict. And honestly, Marie does not even disagree. She just reminds her that there is something far more important she still has to get through tonight. And now our girl starts panicking because earlier that day, her childhood friend and sister-in-law, a woman named Murina Dalaleu, gave her the most terrifying explanation of marriage imaginable. Instead of her, she pulls out a little box with a keyhole and starts comparing marriage to shoving a giant key into a lock over and over again. Then she casually explains that men have something even bigger than the key attached to them, plus 2 round sacks hanging underneath. At this point, even I am stressed for her. Things somehow get worse when Murina demonstrates the entire process by repeatedly pushing the key in and out while explaining how the husband eventually loses control and sprays his seed inside the woman. Lariella nearly passes out on the spot, imagining something that huge entering her body again and again. Meanwhile, Murina is smiling as if she's giving normal life advice and tells her not to worry, because eventually she will enjoy it so much she will want more. Yeah, no, our girl looks absolutely traumatized. Back in the present, Lariella sits nervously in the bath thinking about everything she just heard, and her imagination starts running wild about the Duke touching her, kissing her, and seeing her naked. Then Marie barges into the room and instantly ruins the moment by reminding her that she still cannot eat lamb. Instead, she brings soup and prepares special clothes for the wedding night. The outfit is so revealing that Lariella immediately panics, but Marie insists she must wear it because she is spending the night with the most desired man in the entire empire. Apparently, countless noble ladies spent years trying to catch Duke Elmano's attention and failed, so Marie is determined to make sure her mistress leaves an unforgettable impression tonight. After getting dressed, even the maids cannot help but praise how beautiful she looks, though Lariella is still more worried than excited. Then Marie drops one final warning before leaving and tells her not to bite down too hard on whatever enters her mouth later. That comment completely confuses her, and honestly, I do not even blame her anymore because nobody in this mansion explains anything normally. Much later that night, she waits alone in the bedroom while overthinking every possible scenario. She convinces herself the Duke will probably kiss her first or embrace her passionately the second he walks in. So when the door finally opens and Duke Elmano enters, her heart nearly explodes. He walks closer, removes his shirt, leans in, and kisses her. And this is the moment she believes everything Murina described is finally about to happen. But then this man calmly tells her she must be tired and says they should sleep instead. That is it. He lies down beside her like nothing happened, while she stares into space, completely confused. After all that fear and mental preparation, the night simply ends with a polite goodnight. I did not see that coming at all. A month passes after the wedding, and the servants inside the mansion are already gossiping nonstop. 2 maids complain that the bedding is spotless every single morning and grumble about having to wash perfectly clean sheets again and again. Then they notice someone nearby and lower their voices. But honestly, they do not even care if she hears them because, in their eyes, the new bride is not fully the Duchess yet. Meanwhile, the woman they are mocking, Lariella, quietly walks through the hallway and stares outside the window at her husband, Duke Kais Elmano. He notices her looking at him for a moment, then calmly turns away and goes back to work as if nothing happened. And at this point, our girl is suffering. She cannot even understand what is wrong with this marriage anymore. Every night he visits her room, kisses her gently, and sleeps beside her, but nothing more ever happens. The marriage still has not been consummated, and the rumors have already spread through the entire palace. The governess even puts her through exhausting preparations every single day. She barely gets enough food, spends hours bathing, and keeps trying to become the perfect wife, yet the Duke still keeps his distance. Poor girl is starting to wonder what the point of being beautiful even is if her own husband will not even embrace her. While she stands by the window, feeling miserable, her maid, Marie, walks in and notices that the flower plant she brought from home is dying. The plant is called La Tiara, and it carries a romantic meaning in Pololeu. Lariella explains that people there carve the name of the person they love onto the seed before planting it. Then, when the flower blooms, they confess their feelings with it. Her own brother used those flowers to propose to Murina, which is why she brings the plant with her after getting married. But because her room barely gets sunlight, the flower slowly withers away. And honestly, the symbolism is hitting hard right now because her marriage is going through the exact same thing. She starts wondering what the point of living in a grand palace is when everything inside feels so cold and distant. Then the story flashes back 1 year earlier to the moment all of this begins. During a banquet gathering, she notices a handsome nobleman standing alone, and that man is Duke Kai's Elmano. He catches her staring, politely bows toward her, and somehow that tiny moment stays in her mind. Not long after, an enormous marriage proposal arrives, with 200 gold coins packed inside an ashwood chest. Even her family thinks it must be a mistake, because the Duke has no connection to her at all. Still, she realizes refusing such a powerful noble could destroy her family's reputation, and she suspects there must be some hidden reason behind the proposal anyway. So despite everyone's shock, she accepts the marriage. She even convinces herself that things will work out because handsome husbands get forgiven for a lot. I mean, she is trying so hard to stay optimistic here. Later, she secretly plants a latiara seed with the Duke's name carved into it and promises herself she will give him the flower once it blooms. Back in the present, she tells Marie she needs to try even harder and asks for a stronger perfume tonight because she still believes they will eventually grow closer. But while she walks away, the Duke quietly watches her leave. His cousin Walklin notices and immediately calls him out, asking why he keeps avoiding his own wife when the servants are already spreading cruel rumors about him. Then, things get darker when the story reveals his past. Years ago, people whispered about how young Kais forced out his own father and took control of the duchy. His father, Drake Elmano, ruined the family with gambling and endless affairs. Yet even after becoming Duke, people still whisper that Kais carries the same blood. And suddenly it becomes painfully obvious this marriage has far more problems hiding underneath the surface than either of them realize. As a young boy walks through the mansion hallway, strange sounds suddenly stop him in his tracks. The moment he opens the door, all the ugly words people constantly use to describe his father rush through his mind. Philanderer, lecher, rogue, one-night stands, and standing there in the middle of it all is Duke Drake Elmano himself. The boy immediately thinks of him as the disgrace of the Elmano family, and honestly, it is hard to disagree. Instead of caring about his dying wife, this man is fooling around without shame. Then the Duke notices his son and casually greets him like nothing is wrong. The young heir hesitates before finally forcing himself to speak and tell him his mother is in critical condition. But instead of reacting with concern, his father coldly says that means he will finally get some peace and quiet. Yeah, this man is horrible. The boy looks completely shattered and immediately runs out of the room while his father mocks him for being weak and pathetic. Outside the hallway, he struggles to breathe through the shock, and then a maid rushes toward him with terrible news about his mother. In the next moment, he reaches her bedside and finds her sick, exhausted, and covering her ears like she cannot endure anything anymore. He softly calls out to her, but instead of comforting him, she blames him for everything and says if only he had never been born. And just like that, she dies. The boy walks away in tears, only to hear the disgusting sounds coming from his father's room again, and at this point, it becomes painfully obvious why he grows into such a cold man. Back in the present, Duke Kai's Elmano finally admits something is wrong with him. His cousin Walklin immediately loses patience and bluntly asks if he is seriously saying he is impotent after all this time. The Duke looks irritated and explains that the doctor already confirmed there is nothing physically wrong with him. But Walklin does not care about excuses. He warns him that if he keeps neglecting his wife, she will eventually run into another man's arms. The Duke looks genuinely shocked by the idea, while his cousin explains that noble women in unhappy marriages often take lovers because divorce is nearly impossible in high society. And honestly, this conversation hits him hard. He suddenly realizes he spent so much time obsessing over marrying Lariana quickly that he never thought about what would happen afterward. Later that night, he sits alone in the bath and finally admits the truth to himself. He cannot even hold his own wife properly or have a normal conversation with her, and at this rate, losing her feels inevitable. So after getting dressed in his nightwear, he heads straight to her room. He opens the door expecting silence, but instead, she is already waiting for him. Then, before he can even process anything, Lariana pushes him down into a chair and directly asks him to bed her. And I am not even going to lie, after all that suffering and awkwardness, our girl finally deciding to take matters into her own hands feels kind of satisfying. After gathering all her courage, Lariella directly asks Duke Case Elmano to bed her, and for a moment, it finally seems like their marriage is about to move forward. The two become intimate, but right in the middle of it, the Duke suddenly stops everything and quietly apologizes to her. Then, before she can even understand what is happening, this man gets up and walks straight out of the room. And honestly, at this point, even she is completely lost. The next morning, her maid Marie rushes excitedly toward the Duchess's room, fully expecting good news because surely after all this time, the marriage must finally be consummated, right? But the second she walks in, she finds Lariella still collapsed on the bed, looking emotionally destroyed. Then everything spills out at once. The poor girl explains that she did absolutely everything she could think of. She took a longer bath, wore revealing lingerie for the first time, and even threw herself at him directly, only for the Duke to reject her again and apologize before leaving. At this point, her embarrassment is so intense that she literally begs Marie to knock her unconscious. Honestly, I feel terrible for her because this entire situation keeps getting more painful every episode. Later that day, Marie gently asks if she wants to go outside to improve her mood, but Lariella instead decides to spend time in the study because the last person she wants to run into right now is her husband. Meanwhile, the atmosphere inside the Duke's office is so gloomy that even his cousin Joaquin notices it immediately. Then suddenly, Duke Elmano slams his desk hard enough to make everyone jump. Inside his head, he keeps replaying last night over and over because he knows he wanted to hold Lariella in his arms more than anything. He even remembers how desperately happy he felt after finally marrying her. But the moment things become intimate, his mind completely spirals out of control. Then, the reason finally becomes clear. As he sits there drowning in guilt, memories of his disgusting father start haunting him again. He remembers all the women his father treated like toys before they vanished from the estate without a trace after his downfall. And now every time he gets close to his wife, horrifying hallucinations of Duke Drake Elmano start whispering into his ear. His father mocks him for hesitating and claims he paid for Lariella, so he has every right to use her however he wants. Yeah, this man somehow continues ruining his son's life even after being gone. Then the hallucination twists things further by putting cruel thoughts into his head, making him imagine Lariella secretly resenting him and regretting the marriage. He hears fake voices asking why she had to marry him and saying she wants to go home. The worst part is that deep down, he genuinely believes he destroys everyone he loves. That fear completely overwhelms him, so instead of staying with her last night, he runs away. Back in the present, he realizes the entire thing was basically a nightmare inside his own mind, but the anxiety still refuses to leave him. Finally, he calls for his butler, Willis, and asks a heavy question. Since the man has served the family since before he was born, he wants to know if there are still things about his father that nobody ever told him. And honestly, this feels like the first time he is finally ready to confront just how badly his childhood destroyed him. Duke Case Elmano quietly asks Willis if there is anything about his father that was hidden from him, and both Willis and Joaquin immediately look confused. Willis firmly explains that he and Joaquin already cleaned away every trace of Duke Drake Elmano after his fall, and it took years to handle the damage he caused. According to him, there is nothing left untold. Still, the Duke clearly does not look convinced. Meanwhile, the silence between the three men says more than the actual conversation. Later that night, the Duke sits alone on the floor beside his bed in his nightwear while trying to calm himself down. He cannot stop thinking about the hallucination he experienced earlier, and now he is terrified people will start comparing him to his father. Honestly, this poor man spends every waking moment scared of turning into Drake. The next morning, he stares out the office window, reminding himself not to let his guard down. But then an urgent letter suddenly arrives from the Marks household. Willis takes the letter and instantly reacts strangely after reading it. That alone already feels suspicious. He questions the maid who delivered it, but she insists she only followed orders. Then, the moment she leaves, she secretly meets the head maid and gets paid for passing along the message. Yeah, these servants are messy. Things get worse when the head maid starts gossiping with Madame Desiree about a red-haired woman she once saw leaving the Duke's office half-naked years ago. They immediately assume it was Lady Arette and begin spreading rumors that she is probably one of the Duke's many lovers. Then, the insults toward Lariella start flying nonstop. The head maid mocks her appearance and calls her a clueless country girl, brought in only so the Duke could continue fooling around freely. Madame Desiree even agrees that the Duchess lacks the kind of charm men supposedly like. These two are absolutely brutal for no reason. Unfortunately, Lariella and Marie walk by right in time to hear part of the conversation. Madame Desiree instantly switches to a fake polite tone and starts lecturing the Duchess about her duties. She complains that high society is already gossiping because Lariella still has not hosted a tea party, even after 1 month of marriage. Then she keeps piling on criticism while basically implying the Duchess is failing at everything else too. Lariella stays calm through all of it, but Marie looks ready to explode. The second those women leave, she angrily points out that Madame Desiree is only a distant relative acting far above her place, while the head maid behaves like she owns the estate. Lariella sadly admits they were probably offended from the start because the Duke chose a country noblewoman as his wife instead of someone from high society. Then Marie suddenly bursts into tears because she cannot stand seeing her lady treated this way. Honestly, she might be the only person in this mansion openly on Lariella's side. The Duchess gently teases her for crying like a child before leading her toward the study. Deep down, though, she already realizes consummating the marriage probably would not change the servants' attitudes anymore because they have fully shown their true colors. At the same time, returning home would humiliate both herself and her family even more, so giving up is not an option either. Then her thoughts drift back to the rumors about Lady Arette being one of the Duke's lovers, but she quickly pushes the idea away, because the Duke still comes to her room every single night. He only sleeps beside her, but he still comes. More than anything, she decides she needs to understand him properly. This man barely speaks about himself, keeps his emotions hidden behind that cold expression, and somehow still remains impossible to read. So instead of running away from the problem, Lariella decides to uncover the real reason Duke Case El Mano proposed to her in the first place. And honestly, this is probably the first time she starts looking at her marriage like a mystery instead of a romance. Inside the study, Lariella quietly falls asleep from exhaustion while Marie gently places a blanket over her shoulders. At this point, the poor girl is barely holding herself together. Then Marie starts thinking back to when she first hears she is being sent to work at the El Mano estate. The moment she hears the Duke's name, she immediately dislikes the idea because the El Mano household already has terrible rumors surrounding it. Since she cannot refuse the transfer, she ends up resenting the unknown country girl, who somehow catches the attention of the cold Duke. In her head, Lariella must be some dangerous beauty with countless lovers secretly wasting the Duke's fortune. Honestly, Marie imagined an entirely different person. Then the memory shifts to the day Lariella first arrives at the estate. Marie watches the carriage roll in and is surprised because the new Duchess looks much more ordinary than expected. But then Lariella nearly slips while stepping down, and Duke Kais instantly catches her without hesitation. Yeah, that tiny moment changes Marie's whole first impression. Later inside the mansion, Marie formally introduces herself as Lariella's personal maid, but the Duchess immediately greets her politely in return and even struggles to drop formal speech with servants. That catches Marie off guard because noble ladies normally do not treat maids so gently. Soon after, Lariella begins harsh training to prepare for life as a duchess because she never receives proper noble education growing up in the countryside. Madame Desiree pushes her relentlessly to the point it barely even feels like training anymore. Marie watches the constant criticism and starts feeling bad for her. One day, after especially harsh lessons, she brings refreshments to Lariella's room, expecting to find her crying, only to discover the girl missing entirely. Then she spots her outside, sitting in the grass, focused on repotting her beloved La Tiara plant because she cannot stop thinking about it during lessons. Honestly, instead of acting like a noblewoman, Lariella acts more like someone happiest with dirt on her hands and flowers beside her. That moment slowly changes everything for Marie. She realizes Lariella is nothing like the selfish woman she imagined before arriving here. Instead of obsessing over expensive clothes and attention, the Duchess dresses simply, reads books most noble ladies ignore, and quietly spends time caring for plants herself. Marie starts feeling guilty for judging her so harshly before even meeting her. Later, while they walk through the garden together, she finally asks how Lariella and the Duke first meet, only to learn the two never even have a real conversation before marriage. They only briefly see each other once at a banquet. Now this is where things start getting suspicious, because even Marie realizes there must have been another reason behind the proposal. Still, she remembers the way the Duke looked at Lariella that day, and it definitely does not feel fake. Back in the present, Marie watches the exhausted Duchess sleeping in the study and silently fumes over the disrespectful gossip spreading through the mansion. The head maid's cruel comments about the Duke preferring full-figured women still echo in her mind, and she quietly hopes the woman eventually gets punished for running her mouth so freely. Meanwhile, in his office, Duke Case reads the urgent letter from the Marks family, and finally, the truth behind everything starts slipping out. The letter announces the wedding between Alan Marks and Lady Arette Ramona, the exact woman servants previously gossip about as one of the Duke's supposed lovers. Willis immediately offers to send a normal wedding gift, but the Duke suddenly refuses and orders something extravagant instead. That shocks Willis because the Duke almost never reacts emotionally to anything. Then the Duke quietly reveals the real reason. He says he owes them greatly because, thanks to them, he is able to marry Lariella instead. And honestly, this changes the entire situation immediately, because now it becomes painfully obvious the Duke has wanted Lariella for far longer than anyone realizes. 6 years before the disaster called marriage even starts, a powerful Duke sits across from a desperate noble who is drowning in debt. And honestly, this man has enough financial problems to sink an entire kingdom. His son gambles nonstop, his daughter burns through money like firewood, and every failed investment keeps dragging the Ramona family deeper into ruin. So when Count Ramona asks for 300 gold with a straight face, Duke Kais El Mano already looks done with this conversation before it even properly starts. The Duke calmly points out that the Count already mortgaged basically everything he owns, including his mansion, villa, and even his capital residence. At this point, our guy is practically asking for a miracle loan, but instead of giving up, the Count suddenly claims he still has one precious jewel left. And the way he talks about it instantly makes things suspicious. He says this treasure is worth more than the money itself, and insists the Duke prepare the promissory notes first before seeing it. Now this is where things start feeling shady. Even Kais notices something is off, but he decides to play along anyway and tells Willis to prepare the papers, But the Count says, let them go to the Duke's office because he wants privacy to show the jewel, and which the Duke agrees to. But then the Count suddenly acts nervous and says he needs to use the restroom first? Yeah, totally not suspicious at all. He quickly disappears while the Duke enters his office alone, and the second he steps inside, he immediately realizes he walked straight into a setup. Inside the office stands a beautiful, noble woman named Lady Arete Ramona, and she instantly apologizes for barging in without permission. The Duke already understands what kind of trap this is, so he tells her to leave immediately and promises to forgive the disrespect if she walks out now. But instead of leaving, she grabs his arm and presses herself against him while begging him to give her a chance. And this woman is going all in. She reminds him about the balls they attended together, the dances they shared, and the feelings she believes he secretly returned. According to her, if he had simply accepted her affection earlier, none of this would have happened. At this point, we can all agree this family planned the most desperate marriage scheme imaginable. But the worst part is what her words trigger inside him. The second she talks about responsibility, old memories come crashing back into his mind. People blaming him for his father's sins. People saying his existence ruined lives. People telling him the fate of the Almano family rests entirely on his shoulders. Even his dying mother blamed him for her suffering. All those ugly voices return at once, and you can see the exact moment the Duke's expression changes. So instead of giving in, he coldly asks her one simple question. Why must I take responsibility for you? And wow, that line lands like a knife. Lady Arete keeps begging Duke Case Almano to save her, but the Duke looks completely done with the entire situation. With an angry face, he asks why he should take responsibility for her father's failures, her brother's reckless behavior, and her own foolish decisions. And honestly, the man is absolutely cooking her right now. But instead of backing down, the desperate young lady says she is not even asking to become his wife anymore. She begs him to at least keep her as a mistress or even a secret lover because if he rejects her, she will be forced to marry Marquis Marx. And the second she mentions that name, things get ugly fast. Apparently, Marquis Marx is one of the richest nobles in the entire empire, but the man is also over 30 years older than her and already on his 5th marriage. Even worse, terrifying rumors surround him. People say he abuses servants and family members alike, and he only offered to clear the Ramona family's debts in exchange for marrying her. So from her perspective, this is less of a marriage and more of a sentence. But Kai shows absolutely zero sympathy. He coldly points out that her father clearly does not care where she ends up as long as the debts disappear quickly. Whether she gets sent to Duke Almano or Marquis Marx means nothing to him. The only thing that matters is money. Then he makes it painfully clear he has no intention of participating in their scheme. And wow, this rejection is brutal. The terrified woman realizes begging is not working, so she suddenly switches tactics completely. She starts opening her clothes and threatens to ruin his reputation by making everyone believe he compromised her honor. At this point, this whole situation becomes completely insane. She basically corners herself into thinking public scandal is her last weapon. But instead of panicking, the Duke walks right up to her and completely crushes the plan. He asks if she truly thinks she still has honor after sneaking into a man's office like this. Then he physically throws her out of the room. And just like that, the entire trap collapses. Humiliated and furious, she screams after him and calls him impotent. She threatens to spread the rumor across high society and destroy his image as a man. But somehow, this only makes the Duke calmer. He literally tells her the rumor might actually help him because it would stop women like her from chasing him. I did not see that response coming at all. After throwing her out, he immediately orders Willis to kick Count Ramona out as well and tells him the so-called jewel is not worth even a single penny. Meanwhile, one nosy headmaid secretly watches everything from the hallway. And yeah, this definitely feels like the kind of gossip that spreads through noble society in a single day. Later, while servants clean the office from top to bottom, Wachlin questions why the Duke cares so much about appearances. But Caius explains the Almano family spent 8 whole years rebuilding its honor after his father's disgrace ruined everything. So even the smallest scandal feels dangerous to him. Then the conversation somehow gets even crazier. Wachlin asks why the Duke does not care about rumors of impotence, and Caius casually admits the rumors are not entirely wrong. His cousin immediately loses it and basically says there is no way a man built like him could possibly have that problem. And honestly, poor Wachlin is fighting for his life, trying to understand this conversation. But the Duke explains the real issue is not physical. He simply feels nothing toward women. In fact, women who desperately throw themselves at him make him feel disgusted to the point of nausea. So from his perspective, if society believes he is impotent, then maybe those women will finally leave him alone. And suddenly, a lot of his behavior around Lariella starts making way more sense. The Imperial Palace is drowning in nobles, music, and enough expensive jewelry to genuinely hurt someone's eyes. Every major house in the Empire has shown up to this banquet, all smiling politely at each other while quietly running calculations about status and alliances behind those smiles. And standing right in the middle of all of it is Duke K's Elmano, already surrounded by a crowd of women who have absolutely no intention of giving him space. One lady boldly asks if he plans on attending the ball, and he calmly replies that it is only natural since he remains a citizen under the imperial family's protection. The woman immediately sees an opening and tries to ask him for a dance, but before she can even finish the sentence, he smoothly bows and excuses himself by claiming he is thirsty. Just like that, he is gone. The lady turns bright red, while the women nearby exchange glances and silently mark her attempt as a failure. Honestly, this man dodges unwanted attention like he has been training for it his entire life. Now standing alone with a glass of wine, he thinks quietly about those impotent rumors that have been spreading through high society and how they somehow changed absolutely nothing. Women are still surrounding him at every event, his suffering continues without pause, and nothing about his social life has gotten easier. Then he spots his cousin Walklin nearby, laughing comfortably with some lady, completely relaxed and enjoying himself, and the sight is immediately irritating. This is the same man who practically dragged him to this banquet while lecturing him the entire carriage ride about showing more interest in women before he ends up regretting it. And now that same man is out there having the time of his life while the Duke stands here alone being hunted. Unbelievable. He takes another sip of wine, tunes out the whispers floating around him, and reminds himself exactly why he hates these events so much. They are loud and exhausting and completely fake, and everywhere he looks, people are covered in flashy outfits and expensive decorations while desperately trying to impress each other with things that mean nothing. He decides he will blend in just long enough to satisfy appearances and then find the earliest possible excuse to leave. But then something catches his eye. Through the reflection in his wine glass, he spots a young woman walking past, and the second he recognizes Lariella, he goes completely still. His eyes stay locked on her while another nobleman tries to engage her in conversation, but she barely gives the man any real attention. The Duke immediately wonders if she already has a dance partner lined up, and just as he considers moving toward her, two elderly countesses materialize out of nowhere and corner him completely. These women do not let him breathe for a single second. Endless greetings, endless compliments, endless questions delivered at full volume while he stands there, suffocating politely and trying not to let his expression crack. You can practically feel his soul separating from his body in real time. By the time he finally extracts himself, he rolls his shoulders and exhales like a man who just survived something genuinely dangerous, internally complaining about how loud their voices were the entire time. But just as he finally prepares to make his exit, he catches sight of that same woman again. Something about her pulls at his attention in a way he cannot immediately explain, so he follows it, walking slowly toward the edge of the ballroom to see what she is doing out there alone during one of the largest banquets in the entire empire. And what he finds completely catches him off guard. While every other noble lady inside is working the room, chasing connections and positioning herself near powerful men, this woman is sitting peacefully on a swing outside, reading a book by herself. No flirting, no scheming, no performance for anyone watching. Just completely absorbed in whatever is on that page. Like the grandest social event of the season is happening 20 feet away, and she genuinely could not care less. The contrast is so sharp it almost does not make sense. Everyone else in that palace tonight is desperate to be seen, and this woman is doing everything possible to disappear into a story instead. And for the first time all evening, Duke K. Salmano looks at someone with actual interest. One question settles into his mind and stays there. Who exactly is this woman? Duke Kai Salmano stands near the ballroom entrance, quietly studying the strange young woman sitting alone outside, and the more he looks at her, the more confused he becomes. From her blonde hair down to her shoes, there is not a single trace of proper noble elegance in anything she is doing. She is so completely absorbed in her book that she does not even register a high-ranking duke standing nearby, which to Kai's immediately reads as crude and unsophisticated. He decides there is absolutely no reason to start a conversation with someone like her and turns around to leave. But after only a few steps, he stops. The man literally stands there arguing with himself for a moment before his stubborn side wins, and since he has to pass back through that area anyway, he decides to give her one more glance. Before he can, though, someone else gets there first. A young blonde noble walks up and warmly calls her Lily, asking why she is hiding outside alone instead of enjoying the ball. Kais immediately recognizes him as Baron Rone Polalo, son of the late baron he once knew, who recently inherited the title after his father passed. Watching the two of them together, the Duke quickly pieces it together. She must be the younger sister. They look too alike for her to be anything else. And the second these siblings start talking, the entire mood of the scene shifts completely. Rone crouches down and gently helps put her shoe back on, asks why she is reading a book in the middle of an imperial ball of all places, and Kais watches quietly from a distance while remembering that the late Baron Polaleo was known as a scholar too. The love for books apparently runs straight through this family. Then the young woman finally speaks, complaining that she never even wanted to come outside in the first place, and the moment her voice reaches him, the Duke goes completely still. He expected rough and awkward. What he gets instead is calm and soft and completely unexpected, and the man actually feels heat rise to his face before quickly pulling himself back together. Poor guy is losing a battle he did not even know he had entered. She explains that she originally slipped away to the library because her brother was busy greeting nobles inside, but while she was there, a man and woman suddenly rushed in and started getting intimate, forcing her to flee outside in a panic. Kaze nearly laughs out loud at that because, apparently, she is the only person in the entire empire who escapes a ball by going to the library to read. Then Renee asks why she left the ballroom with the second son of Viscount Ronick in the first place, and the second that man's name comes up, her expression shifts entirely. And she calls him a fat badger without a single moment of hesitation. The Duke has to physically stop himself from laughing, because if he makes a sound, he is finished. Even the siblings pause for a second, wondering if some animal made a noise nearby. Calling a nobleman a fat badger at an imperial banquet is genuinely unhinged behavior, and honestly, it is the most entertaining thing that has happened to him all evening. Still pouting, she asks her brother if he wants to know what the fat badger actually said to her, and this is also where the Duke finally learns her name, Lariella Polaleu. And without even realizing it, a small smile appears on his face the moment he hears it. She explains that the Viscount's son mocked her life in the countryside and suggested she could have spent all those years reading and gardening, improving her beauty, and finding a husband instead. Even Case looks quietly offended on her behalf, hearing that, but then she tells them what she said back. With the sweetest smile she could manage, she told him that maybe he would know how to hold a proper conversation if he had spent more time reading books instead of rating women's appearances. And just like that, the Duke is completely stunned. Renee bursts out laughing while Lariella sits there looking entirely unbothered and proud of herself, and Kais keeps staring at her like he is seeing something completely different from what he noticed 5 minutes ago. He thought she looked plain and forgettable. He is realizing very quickly that is not true at all. The conversation softens after that. Lariella tells her brother he does not need to drag himself to events like this just to find her a husband. She says the reason she is still unmarried has nothing to do with the years she spent caring for their sick father. She simply has not met the right person yet. And if she never does, she is perfectly happy spending the rest of her life beside her family and the people of Pololo. That lands on the Duke harder than he expects. Standing there in the dark listening to her, painful memories start surfacing quietly. He remembers watching people he cared about suffer while feeling completely powerless. He remembers the moment he decided to close himself off from everything. No joy, no attachment, just exhaustion and resentment carried alone for years. And yet somehow, while listening to this woman talk casually about books and flowers and village life, he notices something strange happening. For the first time in a long while, he is smiling, and he has no explanation for it. Then Renee teasingly asks what kind of man she actually wants to marry, and after thinking for a moment, she starts listing her conditions one by one. Someone who will not criticize her for reading too much. Someone who will not demand a massive dowry, and someone wealthy enough to send Polale an ashwood chest overflowing with gold. The second those words leave her mouth, Duke Kais Elmano starts listening with an entirely different kind of attention. A noble duke rides through the night across the entire country over a woman he has barely even spoken to once. Yeah, this man is already finished and he does not even know it yet. It starts with a map on the table. A cold-eyed duke sits beside a large table covered in land inspection documents, while Walklin tries to keep the meeting on track. And then, out of nowhere, the duke suddenly asks where Polaleu territory is located. Walklin stops and stares because they are literally in the middle of discussing Elmano land, so hearing Polaleu come up completely out of nowhere almost gives him a headache in real time. The Duke repeats himself with that particular annoyed expression that tells everyone in the room to stop asking follow-up questions, and poor Walklin already knows this mood is dangerous territory. One wrong sentence and this man might actually start biting. So he pulls out another map and searches carefully until he finally spots Polaleu sitting at the far eastern edge near Gilcote, so small and tucked away that he almost misses it entirely. Meanwhile, the Duke stares at the map like it personally offended him, and when Walklin carefully asks why he suddenly cares about some tiny barony in the middle of nowhere, the Duke ignores the question completely and just asks how long it takes to get there. Walklin estimates around 4 days by carriage, maybe a day and a half on horseback, and the second he finishes that sentence, he immediately regrets opening his mouth further because the look he gets back practically screams, "Stop talking." And this is where it gets interesting because back in his office, the Duke sits quietly and thinks about the ball from 2 weeks ago. Out of every noble, every conversation, and every carefully orchestrated social event that night, only one person is still stuck in his head. A strange country girl sitting outside the ballroom, reading a book like she had somewhere better to be. He admits to himself that he cannot stop thinking about her. He even starts attending other banquets just hoping to run into the Pololiu siblings again, and when they never appear, it only makes him more irritated with himself. Wachlin, who has been watching all of this unfold with increasing disbelief, finally points out how ridiculous the Duke has been lately. This man voluntarily attends parties he despises, refuses to dance with anyone, stands around staring at people like a confused meerkat, then leaves early without explanation every single time. Honestly, the impotence rumors are working overtime trying to explain this behavior. Wachlin also reminds him that the imperial family still wants him to marry the princess, and if he rejects them again, things with the royal family could get genuinely complicated. The simplest solution is marrying another noblewoman quickly, but with all these rumors already spreading, what woman in her right mind would agree to that now? The whole time Wachlin talks, the Duke barely reacts, just sitting there with that unreadable expression. And then suddenly his eyes go wide like something just struck him directly in the brain. He stands up immediately and announces he has somewhere to be. Wachlin is left standing there, wondering what kind of nonsense is about to happen next. Then the scene cuts to horses racing hard across open land under a dark night sky, and leading them is none other than Duke Elmano himself. This man actually rides all the way to Pololiu territory in the middle of the night over one girl he saw smiling while reading a book. Our boy is down catastrophically, and the situation has not even started yet. They finally stop at a quiet village surrounded by hills, and Wachlin looks seconds away from a complete breakdown because he still cannot believe they actually did this. But the Duke just calmly tells everyone to rest for the night like this is a completely normal business trip. At the inn, everyone falls asleep except him. He lies awake staring at the ceiling, and for the first time in a long time, he is genuinely questioning his own behavior. This is the most reckless thing he has done in years, riding across the country on impulse over a woman who does not even know him properly, and that realization sits uncomfortably in his chest as the night drags on. Morning arrives quietly, birds outside, soft light coming through the curtains, and the Duke walks to the window and opens it slowly. The village is simple and completely unremarkable compared to the capital. No grand estates or elaborate gardens, just hills and open air, and the kind of stillness he has not felt in a long time. For one brief moment, he actually feels relaxed. Then reality crashes back in immediately because he still has absolutely no plan. He cannot walk up to the Pololiu estate and admit he rode through the night to see a baron's sister. That would create a misunderstanding so enormous that he would never recover from it socially. So he stands there at the window trying to invent a reasonable excuse, and then fate decides to skip all of that entirely. A carriage stops nearby, the door opens, and stepping out into the quiet morning light is a young woman with soft blonde hair carrying a basket in her arms. The Duke goes completely still. Because it is her, Lariella, standing right there in the village like she simply walked out of the thought he could not get rid of, smiling gently in the morning like nothing in the world is complicated. This man never stood a chance. Elmano told himself he only came to confirm she was nothing special, that rare things have a way of appearing more valuable than they actually are, and that was all this was. Just curiosity. Just his mind playing tricks on him after 2 weeks of being unable to shake one face from his thoughts. He even chuckles to himself, watching her from the inn window, remembering how she called someone a fat badger at an imperial banquet, because here she is now in the village square acting like an overexcited filly surrounded by a crowd of eager children. She settles beside the fountain with a book in her lap and tells them she is going to read them the story of a brave and wonderful knight who defeated a fearsome dragon, and every single child leans in immediately. Elmano watches from above, and somewhere between observing her and telling himself he is only here out of academic interest, he starts noticing things he did not mean to notice. He remembers how surprised he was the first time he saw her, that one face somehow capable of making so many completely different expressions. Now, watching her with these children, he understands where that came from. She honed it right here, reading stories, performing every character, making small people feel like the world inside the book is completely real. Then, one of the children, a boy named Lalu, starts crying and tells her he is scared, and without missing a beat, she pulls him close and gently pats his head until he settles. Elmano's eyes stay fixed on her face, taking in every detail slowly, and then, without realizing it, his gaze drifts to her lips and just stays there. He drops his head immediately. His face is completely red. He is sweating. He starts flapping the collar of his shirt, trying to get some air while internally questioning what exactly he thinks he was just doing. He only came here because she was curious and different, that is all. So why does he feel like he is overheating from the inside out? Then he makes the fatal mistake of looking up again, and for one split second, their eyes meet directly. He jolts so hard he tumbles straight off his seat and hits the floor, pressing himself flat against the wall with his heart pounding and his face still burning. He is a suspicious outsider dressed as a knight who entered Pololiu territory the night before and is now being caught spying on Lady Pololiu from the second floor of an inn window. He lies there, genuinely praying she did not recognize him. Then he looks down and realizes his body has betrayed him completely. He stares at the situation in genuine disbelief. He stands up slowly, processes what he is seeing, and concludes that he might actually be losing his mind. This man has always handled that side of things purely out of physical necessity. No feelings involved, no real desire, just maintenance. He had been getting along perfectly fine for years. So what on earth is this about? It makes no sense to him that simply watching Lariella read a story to children could do this, and yet here he is, in very real pain, with absolutely no explanation that satisfies him. He has no choice but to deal with it then and there. And the whole time her voice floats up from outside, continuing the story about the brave knight wielding his large sword with all his might to slay the dragon. The timing of that particular detail is genuinely cruel. He wraps a scarf around his head, pulls it down like a hood, and comes downstairs with all the dignity he has left, which is not much. At the ground floor, Wachlin and the other knights are seated and ready for breakfast, when two village boys wander over and ask Wachlin where they are headed. He answers Polaleu with a smile, and the boys immediately realize that it is their own village and start asking what they plan on doing there. Wachlin confesses cheerfully that he genuinely has no idea, and the boys exchange a look that suggests they find this deeply suspicious. Then Elmano comes down the stairs, bread already in his mouth, scarf still wrapped around his head, and tells Wachlin to get ready because they are leaving and going back. Wachlin stops mid-chew. He asks why they would be turning around after riding all this way without accomplishing anything, and also what is going on with whatever is happening on his head right now. Elmano walks straight out the door without answering a single question. The aftermath of everything that just happened upstairs is still very much with him, and he is not in any condition to explain himself to anyone. Elmano rides back into his manor and barely makes it off his horse before Wachlin is already standing there waiting with folded arms and an expression that has run completely out of patience. You went to Polaleu again, didn't you? It is not even a real question at this point. Elmano does not bother denying it and walks straight past him, and Wachlin immediately falls into step behind him, refusing to let it go. He points out that this is the 6th time already, and if he is going to keep making the trip, he could at least do something while he is there instead of locking himself in an inn room and then riding home. He even starts wondering out loud whether Elmano has developed feelings for the twins running the inn, asking which one it is, the older or the younger, and Elmano tells him flatly to shut up because he is giving him a headache. Wachlin is not done. He raises his voice and asks how Elmano can possibly complain about a headache when he and Willis have been gaunt with worry this entire time. He skipped the princess's coming-of-age ball without notifying anyone. His Majesty sent an actual messenger to check on him. Everyone is now convinced he stayed away deliberately to avoid any romantic entanglement with the princess, and the rumors spreading because of it are getting completely out of control. That last part catches Elmano's attention just enough to make him pause and ask what kind of rumors. Wachlin informs him that not only are people saying he prefers men, there are now whispers that he and Wachlin himself are secretly involved. Even Elmano has to admit that one is genuinely unpleasant to hear. Then Wachlin goes further and points out that the Elmano family's marriage prospects have already dried up completely. So is he now trying to ruin his chances too? Elmano responds with a completely neutral expression and says, "The situation sounds perfect, exactly what he wanted." And Wachlin stares at him for a long moment before the most catastrophic thought crosses his mind. "You really have feelings for me." Elmano does not even dignify that with a response. He reaches over and rings the bell on his desk. Willis appears almost immediately, and Elmano tells him to prepare a very large and sturdy chest made of ashwood, with iron fittings attached to each corner. Then he says to fill it completely with gold coins. Willis nods and accepts the order without question. Then Elmano turns to Wachlin and tells him he will personally escort the chest with the knights, and their destination is Polaleu territory. Wachlin immediately tells him to wait because none of this is making any sense, and asks again whether this is really about those inn twins because he is listening without judgment and there is no need to hide anything. Elmano looks at him with open contempt and then produces a letter sealed with a red stamp. Wachlin grabs it and reads it, and his expression shifts completely. This is not addressed to any inn. It is addressed to the estate of Baron Polaleu. Elmano tells him to deliver the proposal letter along with the chest of gold to Lariella Polaleu, the younger sister of the Baron. The chest and letter arrive at the Polaleu estate shortly after, and when Lariella opens the letter in front of her brother, Willis, Wachlin, and the knights who accompanied the delivery, her expression does not exactly scream excitement. Make of that what you will. 1 month later, Elmano is being dressed by his servants when Willis knocks and steps into the room to inform him that it is time, and the carriage has already crossed the drawbridge. Understood, Elmano says, fitting his gloves carefully onto his hands. Willis looks at him for a moment and then gives him 2 thumbs up and tells him he looks very dignified today. Elmano just clears his throat and accepts the compliment without comment, which from this man is practically a warm embrace. As he walks out, he thinks about why he kept returning to Polaleu 6 separate times. It was never really about confirming her location or finding an excuse to introduce himself. It was about making absolutely sure that what he was feeling was not a fluke or a coincidence, that it was real and consistent and not something his mind invented on a strange evening. And after the 6th visit, he had no choice but to accept the truth. That he, a man who had never felt genuine desire toward any woman up to this point in his life, finds Lariela Polaliu intensely and overwhelmingly arousing in a way he cannot explain away or ignore. He is still sitting with that admission when her carriage rolls to a stop in front of the manor, and she steps out. He extends his hand and she takes it, and then she slips on the way down and nearly falls entirely. And Elmano catches her instantly, pulling her close before he even thinks about it. She steadies herself, thanks him warmly, and tries to calm her breathing, while smiling up at him. Every alarm in his head fires at once. He sets her down gently, collects himself, and responds with a composed nod before stepping back into the formal posture of a duke receiving a guest. "Welcome to Elmano Castle, Lady Polaliu." She returns the curtsy perfectly, holds the sides of her gown, leans forward slightly, and introduces herself as Lariela Polaliu, saying it is an honor to meet him. Elmano thinks to himself that this is quite a belated greeting. Technically, he already knows exactly who she is. He has known for 6 visits now. Elmano is standing at a window watching Lariela in the garden below, and the smile on his face is completely beyond his control. She is not arranging flowers or sketching them like a proper noble lady would. She is kneeling in the dirt with a trowel, happily pulling earthworms out of the soil with her bare hands while a maid watches from the side. Willis explains that she asked him to find a sunny spot in the garden because she wanted to plant seeds herself. Elmano just keeps watching her and thinks about how unusual she is, how genuinely unlike anyone he has ever met, and then his thoughts drift somewhere more dangerous. And he starts imagining pulling her close and pressing his lips against hers, and watching her eyes in that moment, burying his face in her pale skin, and then his body reminds him immediately that this line of thinking has consequences. He cuts it off and quietly admits that Willis made the right call, housing Lariela in the annex during the engagement period, because if she had been any closer, he might have lost all composure entirely. Bio-Roman tradition demands absolute purity before the wedding, and as irritating as that is right now, it is probably the only thing keeping this man functional. 2 months later, she comes down the aisle in a white gown on her brother's arm, and she is breathtaking. The guests are less focused on that, though, and more focused on whispering about why the most prestigious ducal house in the empire moved so quickly, spreading rumors that he brought her to the estate early under the pretense of etiquette lessons, calling her the daughter of an insignificant rural barony, questioning why a duke of his standing would make such a choice. Some of them are even bringing up the impotence rumors at his own wedding ceremony. Elmano is quietly furious listening to them chatter like they think he cannot hear, and more than his own irritation, he feels genuinely sorry that Lariela has to walk down that aisle with all of this floating around her. But he tells himself those rumors will disappear soon enough, and he goes down on one knee and presses a light kiss to her outstretched arm. The ceremony concludes. They are husband and wife. Evening arrives, and Elmano stands at the bottom of the staircase in his black robe, completely still. Willis bows and quietly excuses himself, leaving him alone with the stairs and everything waiting at the top of them. This is the first time he has gone up there since he inherited the title. The Duke and Duchess's chambers sit on the 3rd floor, the grandest and most spacious room in the entire castle, with the best view in the manor. It is also the same room where his father indulged in countless acts of debauchery with woman after woman. The same room where his mother, too proud to leave and too broken to fight, simply withered away, enduring years of humiliation and vile gossip within those walls. Elmano stands at that door carrying all of that history on his shoulders, and hesitation takes over completely. His visceral disgust rises up without permission. He pushes it back down, reminds himself how long he has waited for this moment, how much he wants this, and opens the door. Lariela screams in surprise and he freezes. He registers immediately that he did not knock, which bothers him, but his attention is already somewhere else entirely, because she is standing there in a light undergarment, and she is beautiful. He asks from the doorway if he can come in, and even as he says it, the nausea begins creeping in, the same suffocating feeling that always overtook him whenever women threw themselves at him at parties and events. He fights it. He tries to push through it, but it has already taken over before he can stop it, and all he manages to say is that she should get some sleep because she must be tired. Then he leaves. He admits to himself afterward that he hoped that night was simply nerves, that admitting it was the first time and the pressure was too much, and next time would be different. But next time was the same, and the time after that. Despair replaced hope so gradually he almost did not notice it happening. He ignored the rumors because he was confident he could prove them wrong through action, and instead his arrogance only let them spread further while he continued doing nothing. Walklin kept insisting he needed to talk to her, actually sit down and explain himself, but Elmano could not bear to imagine the look that would appear on her face if he tried. So, he said nothing and kept his distance and let the silence grow between them every single day. Then one morning in the garden, their paths cross as usual, and he is about to walk past her the way he always does when she calls out to him, "Your Grace." Something in her voice makes him stop and turn, and she is standing there with that gentle smile on her face and tells him she wanted to discuss something with him. Elmano goes still and waits, giving her his full attention for the first time in what feels like a very long time. A few hours before that garden encounter, Lariella is sitting at a table surrounded by papers she has been going through for a while, tea going cold beside her, Marie nearby flipping through the newspaper. And then she just decides. That is it. She stands up and tells Marie she needs to talk to the Duke herself. She explains that even though they never had a proper wedding night, he at least used to visit her every single evening without fail. And now 5 whole days have passed since he stormed out, and he has not come back once. Her eyes well up as she says it out loud, and Marie stands there looking nervous because she has actually seen him hiding from Lariella in the hallways and has absolutely no intention of mentioning that. Lariella wipes her eyes and admits to herself that she has never really been able to have a proper conversation with him at all. He is not talkative, and she always found him too intimidating to push past that silence. But she thinks about how her brother and Murina handle their conflicts, how they always set aside time to actually talk things through, and she decides she is done being intimidated. She is going to find him and say what needs to be said. She heads down the hallway with Marie toward his office and runs into Wachlin, who was apparently on his way to see the Duke as well. He greets her warmly and immediately tells her the Duke is not in his office right now, probably out walking by the lake in the garden, and offers to take her there himself. She accepts gratefully, and they walk together, and Wachlin mentions that this is genuinely the first real conversation they have had since the wedding. He explains that because everything happened so fast, he ended up temporarily taking over many of the Duke's responsibilities. And he was so buried in an estate inspection that he had to leave immediately after the ceremony and could not even enjoy the reception. Lariella tells him sincerely that everyone worked very hard, and that small acknowledgement makes Wachlin quietly happy because the Duke just orders him around without a word of appreciation. She asks carefully whether he and the Duke are close, and Wachlin confirms they are, that he has been by his side ever since the title was granted, and tells her confidently to ask him anything she wants to know. She thinks about all the questions stacking up in her head and then decides that asking them directly would only show how insecure and lost she feels. So instead, she comments lightly that the Duke always seemed to have people surrounding him at balls, and must have many close friends. Wachlin immediately understands what she is actually asking, and smiles as he explains that most of those people hover around him purely because of his rank, and that the Duke genuinely despises high society. He finds almost everyone bothersome, Wachlin admits, and finds him the most annoying of all, specifically because he keeps dragging him to social events. Lariella laughs softly at that. Wachlin adds that the Duke, especially, cannot stand people who approach him with ulterior motives, and that he has never once seen him smile at the young ladies who throw themselves at him at every gathering. That lands quietly on Lariella because she realizes she has never seen him smile either, not once since she arrived. Then she spots him in the distance and starts walking toward him without waiting, thanking Wachlin for the conversation as she goes. Wachlin watches from where he stands and looks at the Duke's expression from afar, comparing it to how he used to look, and quietly admits to himself that, despite there not being much visible difference, he seems to smile a lot more these days. She calls out to him and he turns. She tells him she wanted to discuss something and then immediately loses her nerve about what she actually came to say, so her mind scrambles for something safer to lead with first, the tea party. She tells him she would like to host one at the manor, that everyone has been waiting for the new Duchess to hold her first gathering, and she has been putting it off because she did not feel ready, but Madame Desiree recently informed her she was taking far too long. Elmano feels a quiet pang of guilt hearing that because he knows the real reason it kept getting postponed is him, and his failure to make this marriage real in any meaningful way. He tells her she may do whatever she likes, and she thanks him with a smile, and then they both just stand there in silence for a moment. He is the one who breaks it. He asks what she used to spend her time doing back in Palaleu, already knowing the answer but asking anyway. And she comes alive a little, telling him about it. Riding horses, growing crops with her nanny, spending most of her days reading, lying in the shade of large trees with Murina, everyone coming together for dinner in the evenings. She laughs softly, remembering it, and the memories clearly comfort her, and Elmano just watches her with a sadness he cannot hide entirely. The more she describes that life, the more ashamed he feels, because he once told himself he would make her happier than anyone else ever could, and instead he brought her here and quietly took that peaceful life away from her, out of nothing but his own selfish desire to have her close. He does not say any of this out loud. He just carries it. Lariella notices the conversation has lasted longer than any they have had before and feels a small spark of hope. Maybe this is easier than she thought. Maybe they can actually get somewhere. So she leans into it and asks cheerfully what he was like as a child, pointing out that the duchy is so large there must have been so much he could do growing up, and she steps directly onto a landmine. His entire expression changes in an instant, fear and pain moving across his face before he can stop it, and a memory flickers behind his eyes of a small boy standing outside a closed door. He turns slightly away from her and says flatly that, unlike her, he has no fond memories of his childhood at all. Then he mentions the breeze is getting cold and suggests they go back inside, and walks away before she can respond. Lariella stands there alone on the grass, watching him leave, the warmth of the conversation draining out of the moment entirely, and the smile she had been wearing slowly disappears. She looks down and stays quiet for a little while. I should not have gotten my hopes up, she tells herself. Lariella stands alone in the field, staring out at nothing after the Duke walks away, and just before he disappears completely, he turns slightly to steal one last glance at her before continuing on. He looks worse than he did before the conversation started, which is really saying something. Later, she sinks into a hot bath, and Marie comes in to update her on the tea party preparations, invitations all sent out, and the party favors arriving tomorrow. Lariella barely processes it before something else catches her attention entirely. The scent has changed again. Marie hesitates for just a moment, thinking about the butler who quietly asked her to lie about this on the Duke's behalf, and then explains smoothly that it is an essential oil combining lavender with other herbs to help calm the mind. Lariella wonders out loud whether changing the fragrance even makes a difference at this point, still visibly deflated, and Marie quickly adds that it was not only changed for the wedding night, that Lariella has simply seemed tired lately. That small kindness softens her expression just slightly, and then she asks Marie something she has clearly been sitting with for a while. She asks if Marie knows the real reason she accepted this marriage. Marie reminds her that she said it was a proposal too difficult to refuse, and Lariella says yes, at first. She agreed because refusing was not really a realistic option, and everyone around her was already worried the Duke only wanted a duchess in name. But then something strange happened. After some time passed, she started to feel genuinely hopeful about it, for reasons she could not fully explain even to herself. She had always known that love at first sight was a foolish concept found in the pages of novels. And yet she could not stop herself from hoping that someone as remarkable as the Duke might have actually felt something real in that one brief encounter. She had wanted a love like her parents had, like the one between Murina and her brother, and she thought that if she ever truly fell for someone, giving herself to him would not feel frightening at all. She kept picturing his face the entire journey to the duchy, even though she had only seen him once, and the moment she finally stood in front of him, she realized with complete clarity that she was the one who had fallen first. How foolish, she tells herself quietly. Meanwhile, on the other side of the manor, Elmano is sitting through yet another medical examination. The doctor, visibly terrified of the Duke's expression, carefully informs him that he is in excellent health, but that even a perfectly healthy man can struggle in the bedchamber if he is carrying too much tension, and suggests rest and keeping the mind at ease. Elmano tells him to get out. Willis walks the doctor out and reminds him to keep everything confidential, then comes back to find Elmano buttoning his shirt back on and scowling about hearing the exact same advice for the third time from a family that supposedly produced royal physicians. He is running out of doctors and running out of patients simultaneously. He follows the advice anyway, because what else is he going to do? He spends an entire day lying on a soft bed with calming herbs, resting his body the way he was told. He even has Marie continue cycling through different essential oils for Lariella's bath, despite knowing perfectly well it is impolite for a man to involve himself in a woman's personal grooming, because finding any explanation for what is happening to him feels more important than etiquette right now. None of it works. Not even slightly. And the cruelest part of the whole situation is that he cannot even be in the same general vicinity as Lariella without his body reacting completely against his will. A glimpse of the back of her head in a hallway brings back the memory of her bare skin. The sound of her laughing with Marie from another room is enough to send him to relieve himself alone. And then the shame that follows every single time eats away at him until he loses his appetite entirely. He has started thinking of himself as a ridiculous bastard on a daily basis, because when he is actually standing in front of her, he cannot even manage a proper embrace or a real kiss. So instead, he avoids her completely to keep her from seeing what a mess he truly is, and the frustration of that cycle builds heavier every single day. Willis watches all of this with quiet concern and thinks about how long he has known this man. He watched him take on the full weight of the Elmano house when it was on the edge of complete ruin, rebuild it through sheer force of will, and manage burdens that would have destroyed someone twice his age. He never let his guard down, even after things stabilized. He trusted no one and stayed suspicious of everyone because that was simply how surviving had taught him to operate. Willis has not seen him look this genuinely unsettled in a very long time, and it shows on his face as he carefully suggests that perhaps telling the Duchess the truth might actually help. He points out that most problems between couples tend to improve with honest communication. Elmano shuts it down immediately and says that might apply to normal couples, but not to this situation, and Willis does not push further. Elmano sits with his own thoughts and feels the weight of every impulsive decision he made pressing down on him at once. He should have met her at least a few times before sending that chest of gold. He acted on pure impulse in a situation he had no experience navigating, and now the consequences are sitting right here in this room with him. He thinks about how the outside world saw that proposal, an irresistible offer from the most powerful ducal house in the empire, and how people mocked her for accepting it, calling her greedy for wealth and status. But the truth he cannot say out loud is that he has nothing real to hold her with. No emotional foundation, no honest connection built over time. And if she ever discovers the full extent of what is wrong with him, she might end up trapped the same way his mother was, bound to a marriage she regrets with no dignified way out. He would rather it be a curse, he thinks to himself. He would almost prefer that someone placed dark magic on him as punishment for erasing his father from this world, because at least then there would be an answer. At least then it would not be him. He turns to Willis with a look that has already made up its mind. "Willis," he says, "send for the priest." Chapter 17. A young duchess wakes up alone in bed, and the first thing that hits her is the weight of what today means. Her very first tea party as Duchess of Elmano, and not even a casual one. This is high society's formal way of deciding whether she deserves the title or not, and as the maids rush around dressing her up, Madame Desiree's voice keeps cutting through everything. Shouldn't the Duchess at least fulfill one of her duties properly? That woman never misses a single opportunity to remind her where she stands. But instead of crumbling, Lariella straightens up and decides she is going to handle today perfectly. She already knows the women on that guest list are probably all connected to Desiree somehow, which means one wrong move and her reputation in high society is finished before it even begins. So she is not going to make that wrong move. The room looks immaculate by the time everything is ready. Tea sets arranged perfectly, flowers in exactly the right place, guest gifts prepared and checked, every detail accounted for. And yet Lariella already looks exhausted just from the preparation alone, which honestly tracks because this kind of event sounds like a full-time job. She is standing there admiring the garden outside when the head maid suddenly walks in carrying extra gift boxes supposedly sent by Duke Elmano himself. And immediately the woman starts implying that the crystal wine glasses Lariella prepared simply are not good enough for noble guests. Marie fires back instantly and explains those glasses are expensive custom pieces from famous local artisans, basically telling the head maid to stop pretending she cannot tell the difference. But this is where Lariella catches something important. The Duke never actually said her gifts were lacking. The head maid is only assuming that was his intention and running with it, and the second Lariella calmly asks her directly whether the Duke personally said that, the woman completely stumbles. Caught. Lariella tells her she will ask him herself and dismisses her cleanly, and watching that quiet shutdown land is genuinely satisfying. The head maid leaves bitter, and convinced the whole marriage is a joke anyway, since they still have not consummated it, telling herself Lariella is only acting confident because she forgot her place. This woman wakes up every single morning, hoping for her downfall. Meanwhile, the Duke is standing in his office, staring out the window like a man whose entire focus has gone somewhere else entirely. And the reason is honestly a little funny. He cannot even see outside properly anymore because Lariella filled the area with so many flowers that the view is completely blocked. This man carries himself like nothing touches him, but he notices every single thing she does, whether he admits it or not. Then Willis arrives to tell him the priest has finally come, and before they even move, the Duke quietly asks whether the gifts he sent for the tea party were delivered properly. Willis confirms they were, adds that a gift from the Duke himself sends a message before Lariella even opens her mouth, tells those women exactly how much he values her without her having to prove anything alone. The Duke just says he hopes so and walks away, and Willis watches him go, thinking to himself that this man is painfully clumsy at expressing what he actually feels. The priest performs his examination upstairs in the reception room and finds absolutely nothing. No curses, no dark magic, not a single trace of anything supernatural. The Duke almost laughs with relief, but the priest is not finished. He says calmly that not every wound comes from magic or illness, and that some of the deepest wounds come from the heart. When people ignore those emotional wounds long enough, they do not just stay quiet. They rot slowly from the inside until they finally erupt. The room goes very still after that. The Duke does not laugh anymore. He just sits with those words and starts wondering whether there really is something buried deep inside him that he never once stopped to look at properly, something he packed away so long ago he forgot it was even there. The priest leaves without another word, and the door closes softly behind him. And then the Duke notices something. Willis, who has stayed composed through every difficult moment in this household for years, is standing there looking genuinely nervous. That alone is enough to make the Duke's attention sharpen immediately because this is not a man who rattles easily. So he looks directly at him, and the question that comes out changes the entire atmosphere of the room. Is there something you are hiding? Willis, who is normally unshakable, instantly looks nervous. That alone is a bad sign. The Duke does not let him dodge it either. He reminds him plainly who the master of this estate is and demands the truth. And Willis finally drops it. Back when Drake still lived in the manor, someone took their own life inside the estate. The atmosphere in that room turns dark immediately. But before that revelation can fully land, the story cuts to complete chaos on the other side of the mansion because the tea party guests have arrived. 7 noble ladies step out of their carriages dressed like they are attending a royal parade instead of drinking tea for 2 hours. And a young duchess greets every single one of them with a polite smile while internally fighting for her life. One noblewoman praises the estate, another compliments her beauty, another talks about how lucky the Duke must be, and poor Lariella stands there getting buried alive under layers of skirts and fake pleasantries. Once they all settle into the tea room, the conversation begins. And by conversation, I mean elegant nonsense where nobody is truly listening, and everyone is just waiting for their turn to speak. It even reminds Lariella of the sleepy, rambling conversations she used to have back home, and honestly, she is not even wrong about that. Then things get awkward fast. One lady casually asks why Marchioness Marks was not invited, and when another woman explains she recently married Marquis Marks, the name Arette comes up almost immediately. Lariella remembers the rumors instantly. The same Lady Arette, who was supposedly close to the Duke, who apparently danced with him often at noble balls. She quietly starts connecting dots in her head, but stops herself, because she already decided she wants to hear the truth directly from him first, not from a room full of women she met an hour ago. Thankfully, Marie appears and pulls her outside under the excuse of an emergency. One of the expensive crystal glasses meant for the guests has shattered, and Marie suggests simply explaining it to one guest and replacing it later. But Lariella immediately realizes that would only single someone out awkwardly. So she decides to delay all the gifts equally until a replacement arrives, which is honestly a smart move. And she even feels relieved because now she has a reason to use the Duke's gifts instead. The second she steps out, though, every single woman in that room smirks. Fake. Every last one of them. While standing outside, she starts catching fragments of the conversation drifting through the door. Something about the Duchess not being able to do something. Something about things continuing to go badly for the couple. And then she hears it clearly. These women are openly whispering that she still has not consummated her marriage. One says the poor Duchess must be emotionally exhausted from failing despite being newly married. Another cruelly claims she is apparently desperate to make it happen by any means necessary. And the moment those words reach her ears, Lariella freezes completely, because these are the same women who smiled sweetly at her face not 5 minutes ago. Noble society is genuinely brutal. The second Lariella steps out of that tea room, the polite masks completely drop, and these women waste absolutely no time. They start gossiping about how the Duchess is desperate to consummate her marriage, detailing everything, apparently: the scented oil baths, the candles, the freshly changed sheets, the scandalous lingerie she wears every single night trying to seduce a man who never responds. They are treating her marriage like it is their personal entertainment. And the worst part is that Lariella is standing right outside the door, hearing every word of it. She cannot even process how strangers know such personal details about her bedroom. Her mind immediately starts racing through the list of suspects. The maids, Madame Desiree, the head maid. Or maybe everyone in this entire estate has been laughing at her this whole time. All those polite smiles from earlier suddenly mean absolutely nothing. And then the women go further. One of them says this is entirely Lariella's fault for daring to accept a proposal from the mighty El Mano family when she is just some countryside baron's daughter. Another one calls her a grass widow, which is basically the cruelest possible way to describe a woman who is married but completely neglected. Then they go after her family too, and that part clearly hits the hardest. She starts thinking about her grandfather, a respected scholar trusted by the royal family, and about how her family always governed honestly and quietly, without ever harming anyone. Yet these women look down on all of them simply for not being part of elite high society. Poor girl is genuinely wondering whether marrying the Duke destroyed her life more than rejecting him ever would have. But then the conversation shifts in a direction nobody sees coming. One woman points out how suspicious the Duke's behavior really is. Another agrees that no healthy young nobleman stays away from women this long willingly. And then one lady casually drops a single word that stops Lariella cold: impotent. Her entire brain just halts for a second because until now, she assumed he ignored her because he had someone else somewhere. But suddenly, the rumors are saying something completely different. According to high society, Duke El Mano stays away from women because he physically cannot be with them at all. And honestly, you can practically watch her entire understanding of their marriage collapse and rebuild itself in real time. Meanwhile, on the other side of the mansion, the Duke is going through his own breakdown. Alone with his wine, he keeps replaying what Willis revealed about someone ending their life inside the manor because of Drake, and the truth starts unfolding piece by piece in the ugliest way possible. Drake seduced a knight's wife. He manipulated vulnerable women with false promises. Some of his victims became so desperate they took their own lives, and Drake simply paid off the families and erased the scandals like they meant nothing. This man was genuinely a monster. The Duke demands to know what else Willis hid from him all these years, and after a long hesitation, the butler finally says a name: Gladys, the daughter of the nanny who raised him. The Duke refuses to believe it immediately because, as a child, those two were the only warmth he ever knew. His mother was cold, his father was disgusting, but the nanny and Gladys treated him kindly. He even helped arrange a home and dowry for her when she was ready to marry. So Willis has to say it plainly. Gladys never got married. She never even left the manor. Before El Mano inherited the title, he was apparently the one who discovered her hanging near his parents' chambers, and the shock destroyed him so badly he was bedridden for a long time afterward. When he finally woke up, the memory was simply gone. And then Willis delivers the line that makes everything 10 times darker. The day before Gladys died, Drake dragged her into his bedroom. Suddenly, the priest's words about old wounds buried deep inside the heart make terrifying sense. A terrifying truth finally crashes down on Duke K's El Mano, and this man looks like his entire world is breaking apart in real time. The second Willis reveals that Gladys died inside the ducal manor, the Duke immediately demands answers, and when he hears Drake might have violated her, the room practically freezes. Willis admits he doesn't know every detail, but a man named Wucklin handled the aftermath because he happened to be staying at the manor that day. That answer hits Kais like a physical blow, and he stumbles so hard that a wine bottle crashes to the floor. Imagine finding out one of the worst tragedies of your life was completely erased from your own memory. Yeah, this is horrifying. But things somehow get worse. Willis explains that Gladys never left the manor to get married like Kais believed. The woman he trusted like family never got her happy ending. She died before he even inherited his title, and the cruelest part is that Kais was apparently the one who discovered her body hanging outside his parents' chambers. The shock sends him collapsing and bedridden, and when he finally wakes up, the memory is simply gone. Now he sits there trying to understand how his own mind buried something this terrible, and old memories start surfacing alongside the confusion. As a child, he clings to Gladys and her mother because his real family is a disaster. His mother is cold and distant, while Drake spends his life destroying people. So the nanny and her daughter become the closest thing he ever has to warmth. And now he learns Drake may have destroyed Gladys too. No wonder this man can barely function around intimacy. Meanwhile, on the complete opposite side of the mansion, Lariella is also having the worst day of her life. The tea party is over, and she barely even remembers how she sent the guests home, because the same women who smile politely to her face spend the entire gathering tearing her apart behind her back. High society really is an art form when it comes to stabbing people with a smile. One woman casually declares that any man who avoids women must either be impotent or secretly interested in men. Another starts ranting about how men supposedly cannot control their desires no matter how old they get. And then they drag Marquis Marx into it with his creepy obsession with younger women. These conversations get more unhinged by the minute, but then comes the real bombshell. The women reveal that Lady Arette herself supposedly confirmed the Duke's impotence, because before marrying Marquis Marx, she apparently sneaks into his room one night while he sleeps and removes his pants to investigate for herself. I cannot believe this story somehow gets worse every chapter. According to the rumor, she panics after what she sees and immediately accepts Marx's proposal the next day. And these women are laughing about it like it is the funniest thing in the world before turning around to mock Lariella for ending up married to him. And the sad part is, it starts making sense to her. For over a month, she shares a bed with Kais every single night, and he never once touches her or shows any desire toward her. So the gossip slowly fills the silence that he never bothered to explain. That night, she gives up. She tells Marie to stop with the scented baths, the oils, the candles, the special nightwear, all of it. No more preparing herself for something that never comes. And honestly, hearing strangers dissect your marriage like a public performance would break almost anyone. So for the first time in a while, she just climbs into bed comfortably, steals all the blankets, stretches out, and lets herself rest without waiting anxiously for footsteps at the door. At least she gains something from this emotional disaster. But even while trying to relax, the gossip keeps haunting her. She remembers them talking about how Kai supposedly regrets losing Lady Arette, how he sent an expensive necklace as a wedding gift, how he still longs for women despite his condition, and how Drake was a notorious womanizer too. That last part hurts the most, because she once promised herself she would only believe things she heard directly from him. Somewhere along the way, all those rumors slowly crush that resolve apart, and she falls asleep carrying all that confusion in her heart. Then, late into the night, the bedroom door quietly opens, and Duke K's El Mano finally returns. Inside a dream, Duke Kais El Mano is drunk and stumbling up the stairs, but the alcohol is the least of his problems. His mind is completely consumed by thoughts of Gladys. He genuinely believed she was out there somewhere, living a happy life. He treated her like family. Turns out he was just lying to himself the whole time. And what makes it worse is that even now he cannot remember what actually happened. Someone kept him deliberately in the dark, and he has no answers until Wachlin returns. So his mind just keeps spinning with no way out. He stops suddenly in the hallway. That smell. Heavy, suffocating, and unmistakably familiar. It is the scent his father Drake used to love. And just like that, the memories drag him back. Drake was not exactly father of the year. In one particular memory, he sits across from a young Kais and casually questions how his mother ever got pregnant with him, laughing it off as a joke while tearing her apart in the same breath. He called her dull, said she could not learn from the women he brought home, then turned to his own son and told him to pick one of those same women to prove he was truly Drake's child. Yeah, this man was absolutely unhinged. Case does not flinch. He simply offers to send more alcohol up and walks away without another word. But Drake sees right through it. He calls after him and says that look of quiet contempt in his eyes is the same look his brother once had. Then he promises a present is coming soon. Even now, that memory feels like rot spreading slowly from the inside. Drake may be gone, but whatever darkness he planted in Kais is still very much alive. Then something different reaches him as he pushes open the chamber door. A warm and familiar scent pulls him back to the present. Lariella is sitting by the window waiting. He calls her name softly, and she answers. Before he can even explain why he is there, she simply asks him to hold her. And this man, who has been holding himself together all night, completely short-circuits. He spins around, flustered, face burning, absolutely mortified by his own reaction. He tells her he cannot face her like this, and that their first real moment deserves better than this state and this place. But then her hand finds his, and she squeezes gently. She tells him it is all right. This is Dalalu, a place they both love, and that is enough. They kiss. Back in the present, Lariella wakes suddenly to an unfamiliar sound beside her. She turns over and freezes. Duke Case Elmano is right there in the bed next to her. Lariella sits up in the dead of night, staring at the other side of the bed. She never expected him to show up tonight, so it genuinely did not cross her mind that the figure beside her could be the Duke himself. And yet here he is. She watches him sleep. He has been groaning for a while now, and she starts wondering if something is wrong. Then she realizes she grabbed all the blankets for herself. She reaches over to share them, and that is when the smell hits her. Wine. This man has been out drinking while she has been lying here completely distraught. How comfortable must his life be? But even drunk and half asleep, he is still unreasonably handsome, and that frustrates her more than anything. She thinks about how much of her heart she has somehow given this man since the day he proposed, despite everything. He asked for her hand, then hid the fact that he was impotent, threw her entire world into chaos, and yet her affection for him still somehow outweighs the anger. Even if he cannot do anything about it, he can still catch a cold. So she leans over to adjust the blanket, and then she stops. She looks down and blinks. There is something there that absolutely should not be there if this man is truly impotent. She assumes at first it must be a sword he carries for self-defense, which, honestly, is a reasonable assumption, until she reaches out and touches it. It moves. The Duke twitches in his sleep, and she yanks her hand back in pure shock. Then he shifts, and his hand disappears into his own pants, and Lariella pulls the blanket straight over her face. Her mind immediately goes back to Murina and that mortifying explanation about how things work between men and women. The wooden rod comparison. The key and the keyhole. She thought Murina was exaggerating. She was not. And now Lariella is lying here, realizing that whatever is happening under those sheets is not the behavior of an impotent man. Does he not have the sacks then? No, that cannot be it either, because she is fairly certain she felt those too. So, what exactly is going on? She does not get long to think about it because the Duke suddenly pulls her close from behind in his sleep. She freezes completely. Her heart is pounding. Something warm starts spreading below her stomach, and it keeps getting more and more intense the tighter he holds her. She is trying desperately to stay still and quiet, but it is becoming genuinely difficult. Then just when she thinks she cannot take another second of it, he stops. He sits up, looks exhausted, and walks straight out of the room without a single word. Lariella sits there alone, staring at the ceiling. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that man. So why? Why in the world is he pretending otherwise? The next morning, Lariella is buried in medical books inside the library, and Marie is watching her with growing concern. She refused breakfast, locked herself away since dawn, and the energy coming off her is pure, barely contained fury. Marie tries calling her name once, twice, 3 times. Nothing. Then Lariella slams the book shut so hard the table shakes. Not a single book explains why a man with a perfectly working body would refuse to be with his own wife. She is going to lose her mind. She storms out of the library with Marie chasing after her, asking where she is going, and honestly, at this point, Lariella has completely abandoned the idea of acting like a composed duchess. She has questions, and she wants answers. She ends up hiding behind a tree in the garden outside, waiting for the right moment to approach the Duke. She spots him below his office with his cousin Wachlin, who apparently just returned from inspecting the territory. The two could not be more different. The Duke is cold, intimidating, and barely speaks to anyone. Wachlin is warm, approachable, and clearly beloved by every servant on the estate. Yet somehow they are close. She decides to wait until Wachlin leaves before approaching. But then she sees it. The Duke grabs Wachlin by the shoulder, looks him dead in the eyes from inches away, and pins him against the wall. Lariella's heart stops. And just like that, something clicks in her mind that she really wishes had not clicked. A man who does not sleep with women is either impotent or he prefers men. She remembers those exact words from the noble ladies at the ball, and she had laughed them off at the time. She is not laughing now. The Duke is not impotent. She confirmed that herself last night. And here he is with his cousin, in the exact position she once watched a couple share while exchanging passionate kisses filled with raw desire at a ball. The man against the wall, the closeness, the intensity. It is the same scene playing out right in front of her. She tells herself it is nothing, that he could have simply stumbled, that he is cold and difficult but not capable of deceiving her to this extent. She is desperately searching for any other explanation. But last night keeps replaying in her mind. The way he held her, the way her body responded, and now the realization hitting her like ice water that maybe he was not even thinking about her at all in that moment. Maybe he was dreaming of someone else entirely. She turns and walks away from the garden with tears streaming down her face. Every quiet moment between them flashes through her mind. Every time he came to the chambers, he simply went to sleep. Every time she stole glances at him, hoping for something and got nothing back. She thought she understood his coldness. She even felt sorry for him, but not anymore. By the time she reaches her room, she is already writing. She thinks of her brother, of Murina, of home. She does not need any of this anymore. People can call her selfish if they want. She does not care. When Marie walks in, Lariella hands her the letter without hesitation and tells her to send it to her brother immediately. She wants to go back to Dalalay. Duke Elmano wakes up, and the first thing he sees is the other side of the bed. Lariella is there, facing away, perfectly still. He sits up slowly and pieces together what happened. He came here drunk. He had that kind of dream with her lying right next to him. If she had seen him in that state, it would have been a complete disaster. He mutters to himself that this is seriously driving him crazy, straightens up, and walks out. But before he goes, he notices something. That suffocating smell that usually clings to these chambers is fainter than usual. He glances back at Lariella, wrapped up in the blankets, and something almost like warmth crosses his face. He tells her silently to just wait a little longer. Once Wachlin returns, they can finally have the conversation that changes everything. Meanwhile, Wachlin is pulling up to the Elmano estate with grand plans for a long bath and a relaxing evening at his favorite bar. That plan lasts about 30 seconds. The moment he steps out of the carriage and stretches, the Duke is already standing there waiting. No greeting, no words, just a look. Then Kais grabs him by the hand and drags him straight into the library before Wachlin can even protest. Wachlin is annoyed and tells him that whatever this is about, he deserves at least a moment to rest first. Kais tells him if he wants answers, he needs to start talking about Gladys. And just like that, the mood in the room shifts completely. Wachlin tries to play dumb, but Kais is not having it. Willis already told him that Wachlin knows everything. What stops Wachlin cold is learning that Kais still has no memories of what happened. None. And that whatever occurred that night is the exact reason he has not been able to consummate his marriage in the 2 weeks since the wedding. Wachlin looks genuinely stunned and admits he assumed the marriage was simply loveless. Kais cuts him off immediately and asks why on earth he would assume that. So Kais explains what has been happening. Every time he steps into the Duchess's chambers, something goes wrong. Lariella prepares herself, does everything right, and he walks in completely fine until he is not. Something in that room shuts him down completely. Drake's presence haunts every corner of it, suffocating him, and the pain becomes unbearable without alcohol. The doctors say there is nothing physically wrong with him, which means whatever is broken is somewhere in his mind. He tells Wachlin he is ready to hear the truth. All of it. Wachlin goes quiet for a long moment. Then he starts talking. And as the words come out, Kais is pulled back to a memory he buried a long time ago. He was 20 years old at the Imperial Hunting Tournament, the event where noble heirs gathered every 2 years to compete. That was the day he discovered his father had been importing opium and using it to fund his orgies. And worse, that Kais himself had unknowingly been signing off on the purchase documents the entire time, hidden inside trade fund paperwork. The royal family refused to acknowledge Elmano. The other heirs mocked him openly. In their eyes, he was nothing more than his father's accomplice. That night, soaked in humiliation and feeling like something dragged through the gutter, he drank until he lost consciousness for the first time in his life. And that is when Drake made his move. Wachlin tells him that after he passed out that night, Drake had a woman named Gladys brought to his bedchamber. She was bathed, perfumed, dressed in a delicate nightgown, and prepared exactly like a bride on her wedding night. Drake placed her in Kai's bed deliberately. The first place Gladys ever went was not the Duke's chamber. It was his. The moment those words land, something cracks open inside Kai's. His heart is pounding, and the memories he could not reach for so long begin clawing their way back to the surface. The memory hits like a blade. Gladys is there in his room that night, trying to get close to him, reaching for him. And Kai's, drunk and barely conscious, snaps the moment he realizes what is happening. He shoves her away and tells her to get out. The shock and betrayal in his voice is unmistakable. This was someone he trusted, someone he cared about, and she was planted in his bed by his own father. Back in the present, Kais is barely holding himself together. He demands to know why Wachlin never told him any of this. No matter how painful it was, this was something he deserved to know. Wachlin tells him quietly that if he had stumbled across Gladys himself after sobering up, he would have said something. But Drake made sure that did not happen. Drake called for him deliberately. He wanted Kais to find her exactly the way he did. And then Wachlin takes him further back. The Almano name was once one of the most respected in the Empire, a family that stood as a model for nobility. That all changed when the rightful heir died in a sudden accident, and Drake seized the title before anyone could react. He threw money at the Imperial Palace and the High Temple before the funeral was even finished, buying silence and approval at the same time. And through all of it, young Kais was left completely alone to carry the shame of everything his parents refused to face. His mother stood there like a hollow shell. His father did not care at all. The little boy bore the weight of it all by himself. Wachlin admitted something too. He was not by Kais's side out of love or loyalty at first. He was there to protect the Almano name, to make sure the heir did not crumble the way Drake had. He said it plainly. If Kais fell apart, Wachlin's own future would suffer. So he stayed close, watched, and made sure things did not get worse. It was cold, but it was honest. Then the memory shifts to something darker. A young Kais is unconscious on the ground. Wachlin and his father arrive and find him there, and Drake is sitting nearby, laughing. His brother grabs him by the collar, furious, and demands to know what he did. Drake explains it all without a single ounce of shame. Gladys had come of age. She had feelings for Kais. Drake offered her a position as a chambermaid and watched the affection in her eyes turn into something else entirely. He led her into Kais's room. Kais sent her away without touching her, so Drake used her himself. And then Gladys ended up dead. He says it like it's nothing. Like she was furniture he moved around and then discarded her. Then he tells his brother why he dragged Kais to witness it. He needed to be taught a lesson. He needed to see exactly what happens when a woman begs to be held, and a man turns her away. Back in the present, Kais sits in silence as the fog that clouded his memory for so long finally begins to lift. Gladys never understood the line between what was hers and what could never belong to her. And Kais, not wanting to lose her completely, never drew that line firmly enough. So his father turned her into a weapon and used her to destroy something in him that took years to rebuild. Even the people closest to him, like Wachlin, were quietly worried the whole time. And through all of it, the one thing Kais cannot make sense of is this. Why would a father want his only son to become exactly like him? Back in the past, Drake's younger brother stands over him with an imperial decree in hand. The emperor has ordered him personally to put an end to his older brother's opium smuggling operation. He makes it clear that his arrival, instead of the imperial guard, is the royal family's final act of mercy. Drake laughs it off. He already paid off the emperor and the high priest. He thinks he is untouchable. His brother disagrees. He tells Drake quietly that, unlike those men, he does not share their sentiments. And unlike them, he knows everything. Every atrocity Drake has committed that the imperial family is unaware of. If he reports all of it, no amount of money will save him. Drake will stand trial before the emperor, the chief justice, and the high nobles. There will be no buying his way out of that. Drake snarls and threatens him. His brother does not flinch. He simply tells him to prepare to pass the duchy to Kais. Then he walks out. Back in the present, Kais pieces the rest together quietly. His uncle and Wachlin were never just visiting. They were there watching over him the entire time, doing everything they could to protect him from the chaos Drake created. Not long after that confrontation, Drake collapsed from syphilis. His body rotted slowly from the inside, his lower half gradually giving out until there was nothing left of him but silent despair. Kais watched it happen and felt nothing. Not even a flicker of sympathy. He turned and walked away. The days got busy. The memories of Gladys faded, and life moved on. Wachlin pulls him back to the present and tells him he hopes he does not carry any guilt over Gladys. Case thinks for a moment, then admits that they were close as children. But somewhere along the way, she became obsessed. She kept asking to be taken in as a mistress or chambermaid, and he always worried something would eventually go wrong. He never imagined it would end the way it did. As a commoner who had crossed a line with a noble, her punishment would have been severe regardless. He just never thought it would cost her her life. And then Kais breaks down crying. Wocklin, being exactly who he is, immediately ruins the moment by asking if Kais is crying because he is grateful and declaring himself the best. Kais grabs him by the collar and slams him against the wall. He has been suffering for over a month, barely sleeping, completely unable to function as a husband, and Wocklin said nothing. Not even when he was preparing to get married. Wocklin grabs Kais by the head and headbutts him right back, completely unapologetic. He points out that Kais let ridiculous, impotent rumors spread about himself without saying a single word to correct them, and expected Wocklin to somehow read his mind. How was he supposed to know Kais was actually serious about this marriage? Kais rubs his forehead and says, "It is not exactly an easy thing to bring up." Wocklin stares at him and says with absolutely no sympathy that keeping his mouth shut the entire time and then blaming everyone else is exactly the kind of behavior that explains why he cannot get it up. He calls him an impotent bastard. Kais grabs him again immediately. He demands to know who said anything about impotent. Wocklin reminds him that he said it himself not long ago and offers to start calling him Prince Impotent instead. He even points out that Lariella probably thinks she married a eunuch and says completely straight-faced that it is entirely Caius's own fault. Hours later, Willis walks in to find both of them sitting on the floor with wooden swords beside them, looking equally roughed up. He asks if they fought or sparred. Case tells him both. Then he looks at Wocklin and apologizes. Wocklin says it is too late for that. Kais looks at him properly and thanks him for enduring everything until now. Wocklin tells him to call him older brother. Kais immediately changes the subject and asks Willis why he came. Willis hands him a letter from Lariella. She writes that her menstrual cycle has started, and she will be unwell for about a week. She politely asks him not to visit her chambers in the meantime. Kais reads it and goes quiet. He wants to tell her everything right now, but she is not well, and dropping news like this on her while she is already struggling feels wrong. He hands the letter back to Willis and tells him to make sure the maids let him know if she needs anything. Then he sits with the thought that this is going to be the longest week of his life. A week later, a man named Baron Ronet walks into the Duke's office unannounced. Kais tells him he received no word of this visit. Ronet says that is because he came after receiving a letter from his sister. He places a book in Kais's hands. It is a collection of judicial records from the Baya Roman Empire, open to a specific bookmarked page containing every court case in history where a marriage was never consummated. Kais goes completely still. Ronet continues. Throughout the entire history of the empire, an unconsummated marriage is considered legally invalid. Therefore, as head of the Pololeu family, he is declaring this marriage null and void and taking his sister Lariella home immediately. Lariella stands by the window with her bags already packed. Her brother came the moment he received her letter and found a way to bring her home. She knows what an annulled marriage means for her future. Another scandal. Closed doors. A reputation that will never fully recover. She has already decided she will enter a convent once everything is settled. And the things around her room, every gift and every item she received during her time in the capital, she is leaving all of it behind. She does not want any of it. Marie knocks and walks in with tears already streaming down her face, begging her not to go. Lariella takes her hands and tells her she was never lonely because of her. She wishes her nothing but happiness. Then she pulls her into a hug, and Marie completely falls apart. It is the kind of goodbye that breaks something small and quiet in your chest. I would have cried too. As they walk out, Caius appears and calls her name. And that one moment, hearing her name and his voice, cuts deeper than anything else. All this time, that was all she wanted. One glance. One touch. Just her name said out loud by him. She keeps walking without a word. Outside, the maids are already whispering and laughing under their breath. They knew this was coming. Lariella hears every word. She thinks about the head maid who mocked her just 2 days ago within earshot, calling her an empty shell of a duchess bought with a chest of gold. She thinks about Madame Desire, who ignored her when she was unwell and stood right outside her door insulting her family's etiquette. She looks at them both and makes a quiet promise to herself. One day, those reckless tongues will cost them something. Then she glances back at Kais one final time. His face is not cold anymore. It is twisted in something that looks like anguish. She wonders if he ever once imagined it could end this way. She wonders how little he must have thought of her to do what she saw with his cousin so openly, in the capital of all places, without even bothering to pretend. He does not move. He does not try to stop her, and that tells her everything. She says goodbye to Marie softly. Then she steps into the carriage. As it pulls away, she stares out the window and feels almost nothing. 4 months. 3 before the wedding and 1 after. It felt like a lifetime lived fully, and now she is leaving with empty hands. She knew from the beginning she never wanted his title or his wealth or his place in society. There was only one thing she ever wanted, and she was foolish enough to hope that one fleeting interaction could grow into something real. Her brother reaches over and takes her hand. She looks at him and apologizes. He tells her it is going to be all right, and that is when she finally breaks. She grips his hand and cries the way she has been holding back for weeks. He holds her through it and keeps saying it will be all right, and she chooses to believe him, because what else is there to hold on to? She tells herself that this is how it works. You cry until the memories loosen their grip. You endure the ache that settles in like a sickness until it slowly fades. You let the waves of sadness hit you out of nowhere, and each time they pull back, they take a little more with them. Little by little, piece by piece, you move on. Back home in Dalalu, she sits with Mirina, eating, laughing, breathing easier, and she makes herself a promise. The same way this marriage was annulled, one day she will annul her feelings for him too, until it feels like none of it ever existed. Like it was never part of her life at all. A single conversation completely shatters Duke Kai Selmano. Late at night, he walks through the manor staring at the moon, but his mind is trapped in the meeting with Baron Ronet. The Baron doesn't care about consummation. To him, that is the least important problem. Instead, he starts asking questions Kais cannot answer. What food does Lariella like? What books does she read? What makes her smile? The woman everyone in Pololeu treasures like sunlight spent 4 months in this manor, and Kais realizes he knows almost nothing about her. And honestly, that silence says more than any excuse ever could. Meanwhile, Ronet keeps pushing. He reveals that he accepted the marriage because he believed Kais genuinely loved his sister. He noticed every visit, every night sent to Pololeu, every effort made to stay close to her. But Lariella never learned any of that. Instead, she came to believe she was nothing more than a convenient possession, a beautiful object placed somewhere safe and forgotten. Then the Baron delivers the blow that leaves Kais speechless. The bright, cheerful sister he knew is gone. The woman who wrote that letter had already lost her light. Yeah, this is the moment where every mistake finally catches up with him. Back in the present, Kais climbs the stairs and notices something strange. On his wedding night, every step felt heavy, like chains were dragging him down. Now he feels weightless, almost numb. Then suddenly, his foot slips. He crashes down the staircase and slams into the floor. Blood and bruises cover him, yet he barely reacts. He does not even feel the pain. His mind drifts back again. Ronet is still standing there, demanding an answer. Does Kais truly love Lariella? Or does he simply want to possess her? He argues that no amount of physical intimacy will erase the loneliness and pain she endured. If he truly cares about her, then he should let her go. That is the point where Kais finally snaps. He slams his hand onto the desk and rushes out, desperate to find Lariella before it is too late. As he runs through the manor, panic takes over. He begs for this to be some cruel misunderstanding. He promises to spend the rest of his life making things right if only she stays beside him. Then he spots her and calls out her name, clinging to the last bit of hope he has left. Unfortunately, hope is all he has. Standing outside her room later that night, he remembers the woman who could outshine an entire ballroom, even in a worn-out dress. The woman he wanted so badly that he never stopped to ask what she wanted. He finally realizes where everything went wrong. He spent all his energy keeping her by his side and none trying to understand her. With his heart pounding, he opens the door and prays she is still waiting for him like she always did. She isn't. Instead, he finds a ring lying on the floor. The sight hits harder than the fall down the stairs ever could. As he picks it up, memories flood his mind. Her small hands nervously playing with the hem of her dress. The countless nights she stood behind him while he turned his back, the sadness she must have carried alone. Holding the ring tightly, Kais finally understands how much pain he caused. And for the first time, the proud Duke has nothing left except a desperate plea for one more chance. One chance to tell Lariella how foolish he has been before she disappears from his life forever. The next morning, Kais opens the window, and for just a moment he thinks he sees her. Lariella in the garden, moving quietly between the flowers the way she always did. Then the image dissolves, and there is nothing there. Just an empty garden and the weight of everything he failed to notice while she was still standing in it. He goes down anyway. He walks through the garden thinking about every question Baron Ronet asked him. Questions he could not answer. Questions he should have been able to answer without hesitation. She is already gone, and only now is he starting to wonder what her days actually looked like here. What she tended to. What made her stay out in that garden for so long? Then he spots it. A plant sitting alone in the flower bed, lush with leaves but not a single flower. He calls over the gardener and asks if that is normal. The gardener explains that the plant is called Latia and usually blooms with beautiful cream-colored flowers. Lariella brought it all the way from Pololeu herself. She moved it from its pot into the flower bed the moment the buds started forming, but the climate here is different from what it knew back home, and it has been struggling to bloom ever since. The gardener asks carefully if he would like it pulled out. Kays looks at him like he just suggested something criminal. He tells him that if anyone dares touch that plant, heads will roll. Multiple heads. The gardener bows so fast he nearly tips over. Then, without another word, Kais picks up the watering can himself. The gardener offers to do it. Case tells him never mind and waters the plant himself, standing there quietly thinking that he knows this changes nothing. But it would be nice if it bloomed before she came back. If she comes back... Then voices drift over from the other side of the garden. Maids talking freely, laughing between themselves. They say she drenched herself in expensive perfume and went to ridiculous lengths finding the most outrageous nightwear, and look how well that turned out. They say someone from such a backwater place was never going to make it as Duchess of El Mano. They say they knew from the start. Kays goes very still. He asks the gardener quietly if this sort of thing happened often. The gardener cannot bring himself to answer. He just bows his head lower. And that silence tells Kays everything. They talked about her where she could hear them. That was not carelessness. That was deliberate. They wanted her to hear every word. He thinks about what Roné asked him. Everyone who knows Lariella cherishes and adores her. Did the people here feel the same way? Now he has his answer, and it makes him sick. Back in his office, Kai sits with a letter in front of him. He finally has answers to the Baron's questions. Real answers. Detailed ones. Too late, but real. Then the door swings open and Wachlin storms in, wanting to know why he stepped away for 5 minutes and came back to find the servants locked in the basement and the Duchess gone to Polalay. He tells Kais to stop standing around and go bring her back immediately. If he had just consummated the marriage, none of this would have happened. Kais tells him this was never just about the consummation. Wachlin asks what the problem is then. Kais reminds him of something Wachlin mentioned once before: talk among the servants. He never paid attention to gossip below the noble level. He assumed the staff would take the Duchess seriously regardless. They did not. Because the marriage was never consummated, they treated her as someone temporary, someone who did not fully belong, and she had to live inside that every single day. Wachlin goes quiet. Kais tells him there are things that have to be fixed before anything else can happen. Baron Roné was not just venting. Everything he said was a precise list of reasons why Lariella had no choice but to leave. If Kais wants any chance of going back to her, of even being allowed to stand in front of her brother and ask for forgiveness, he needs to be able to answer every single one of those questions with confidence. He needs to earn the right to ask her to come back. He looks up and tells Wachlin to bring him Lariella's personal maid. Right now, Marie sits in the Duke's office, completely confused about why she is here. Then she watches Kais pick up the bath oil Lariella used, smell it, and drop it immediately like it burned him. He tells Willis to get rid of it. Then the petals come out, and the reaction is even worse. He covers his nose and orders them removed from the manor entirely. And suddenly everything clicks into place for him. That overwhelming scent that used to suffocate him every time he approached the Duchess's chambers was never Lariella. It was what Marie was putting on her. He turns to Marie and asks if all of this was her doing. The nightgowns, the perfume, the petals in the bath. Marie stands up and bows so deeply she is practically folded in half. She is already crying. She tells him Lariella never asked for any of it. She wanted to keep things simple. Marie let her own ambitions take over and pushed all of it on her mistress. She swears there were no ulterior motives. Everything she did was for Lariella's sake, and she never imagined it would end like this. Kais goes quiet. He thinks about how Marie clung to Lariella's hand until the very last second when she left. How she wept openly. How even now, sitting in front of someone as intimidating as the Duke, she is still protecting her mistress without hesitation. In a house full of people who treated Lariella like an inconvenience, this maid was the only one genuinely in her corner. Wachlin steps in and tells Kais that it's enough. How could Marie have known he would react this way to things he did not even know bothered him? She is clearly devastated. Kais looks at her for a long moment, then tells her firmly that from now on there will be no perfume on the Duchess and her nightwear will be simple and modest. One more mistake and she will be banned from working anywhere in the entire empire. Marie thanks him through tears and promises it will never happen again. Then Kais tells her he is going to bring Lariella back. But first, he needs to know everything. Marie straightens up immediately. She says if it means the madam comes home, she will tell him anything he wants to know. He asks her to name everyone in the castle who treated the Duchess disrespectfully. Marie goes quiet for a moment. Kais asks why she is not answering. She looks at him and says she is answering. He clarifies he means among the servants. Wachlin bursts out laughing and says she is the most honest maid he has ever encountered. What Marie tells him next makes his fists clench so hard his knuckles go white. The head maid and Madame Desiree, not just disrespectful, cruel. Madame Desiree nitpicked everything Lariella did and insulted her family openly and constantly. The head maid looked down on her for being from the countryside and ignored her every time she asked to see the estate ledgers. They gossiped about her deliberately within earshot because they wanted her to hear. And at the tea party Lariella hosted, the gifts she had carefully prepared for her guests were broken by a maid on purpose, on the head maid's orders. The noble women Madame Desiree invited were not there to celebrate. They were there to confirm the marriage had not been consummated and report back to high society. They sabotaged her, deliberately, systematically. While she was right there trying to build something in a house that never wanted her, Kais tells Willis to bring them both to the lobby immediately. The head maid and Madame Desiree walk down the hallway, whispering to each other about why they were summoned separately. Madame Desiree assumes it must be recognition for everything they endured dealing with that backwater Duchess. The head maid smirks and agrees. They walk in looking almost pleased with themselves. Kais lets them bow. He even acknowledges that they managed the duties of the lady of the house while that position was vacant. The headmaid's expression turns victorious. Then he looks at them and asks quietly whether, just because they filled that role, they actually believed they could become El Mano's true mistress. The smile disappears instantly. He lists everything: the insults, the gossip about the bedchambers, the ignored ledger requests. The headmaid tries to explain herself and stumbles over every word. Then Willis hands Kais a document and he holds it up. Evidence of embezzlement. Funds stolen from El Mano over a long period of time, secured after considerable effort by the head butler. The headmaid shouts that it is lies, that someone is framing her. Kais tells her quietly just how many servants had to be bribed to keep it hidden this long. Then he gives the order: seize her assets, flog her, exile her from the castle. Every servant who sided with her goes too. She is dragged out screaming and begging for mercy while the hallway watches in silence. Kais turns to Madame Desiree. He tells her that what he actually wants is for her to rip out her own tongue right where she stands. But since even a fallen noble is still a noble, he cannot do what he truly wants. So instead, he gives her a warning. If the name El Mano ever leaves her mouth again after she walks out of this place, he will hunt her to the ends of the earth and finish what he could not do today. Then he turns to Willis and tells him to prepare his horse. Willis asks where he is going. Kais is already moving. He is leaving for Polaleu immediately. 10 days. That is how long it takes before Lariella stops crying when she is alone. She spent the first 3 bedridden and the rest keeping herself so busy there was no room left for feeling anything. It is working. Slowly, but it is working. She sits with the children of Polaleu in the sunshine, walks back toward the house asking Mrs. Tara about the lamb for dinner tonight, and for the first time in weeks, she feels something close to normal. Then her brother calls her name. She turns around, and everything she has been holding together for 10 days shatters in an instant. The apples and books fall from her hands, because standing there, catching one of those apples before it hits the ground and looking directly at her, is Kais. She cannot believe him. She was so close. Just a little more time and she would have been fine. And he shows up now, looking like that, standing in her home as he belongs there. She pulls herself together just enough to assume the obvious. He came for the chest of gold. Of course he did. She tells him she hopes the journey was not too much trouble, wishes him a safe trip home, and turns to walk away. He calls after her and says that is not why he came. He came for her. He reaches for her hand. She throws it off. She turns around and asks him exactly what kind of fool he thinks she is. Does he want a puppet duchess to keep up appearances? Is the great Duke of El Mano too embarrassed to have an annulled marriage on his record? She tells him to take the chest of gold and leave. Then she runs. He follows. Behind them, Marina and Baron Renee stand watching with their hands pressed to their foreheads. Marina tells Renee's he should have just laughed out loud. He does, immediately, saying the look on the Duke's face was something he will never forget. Then Marina asks the question that has been sitting in the air. He annulled the marriage, knowing it would come to this, did he not? Renee admits it without hesitation. He saw something on their wedding day that told him the Duke of El Mano was a man in love. A genuine fool in love who simply had no idea how to show it. He trusted that. He just did not expect him to be quite this bad at expressing himself. Marina declares they should go eat dinner alone and leave those 2 idiots to sort it out themselves. Inside the house, Lariella is climbing the stairs, and Caius is right behind her, refusing to stop. She tells him not to come near her. He tells her he knows his explanations might be worthless, but he is asking for one chance to say them anyway. She fires back that he suddenly wants to talk now. After all this time, she tells him she no longer has any use for his words and keeps walking. He asks for 1 hour. Not even that, just long enough to sit with her over dinner. She tells him their humble home does not have food worthy of someone like him. He says he does not need to eat at all. He just wants to sit beside her. She stops in front of her room and tells him she has suddenly lost her appetite, which means there is no dinner and therefore nothing left for him to say. She opens the door, steps inside, and locks it behind her. Kay stands on the other side with his hand against the door and calls her name. On the other side, Lariella slides down to the floor with her back against the door and starts crying. She thinks about how selfish he is. Why is he doing this now? Why is he showing up and reaching for her and stirring something back to life inside her chest when he does not even love her? She was almost free. She was almost okay. And now hope is crawling back in through the cracks, and she hates him for it. Lariella wakes up on the floor. She must have fallen asleep sitting against the door. Morning light is already coming through the window, and for a moment, she just sits there collecting herself. Then she looks at the door and thinks about whether he left. Of course he left. He is the proud Duke of El Mano. Men like him do not sit in hallways overnight. Then someone knocks. Mrs. Tara tells her the hallway is clear and she can open the door safely. Then she holds out a plate of lamb. Lariella stares at it and points out that nobody eats lamb in the morning. Mrs. Tara shrugs and says what can she do when the Duke himself requested it? Lariella goes very still. She tells Mrs. Tara to stop lying. That man does not know what she likes. Mrs. Tara tells her there is no reason to lie and that the Duke has quite a lot to say if she would just ask him herself. Lariella closes the door quietly and stands there alone with the plate of lamb. Something uncomfortable is stirring in her chest and she does not want it there. She tells herself out loud that she does not want her heart to waver. She does not want to spend the rest of her life staring at his back again. He will leave soon enough because he simply does not care. She almost believes it. 5 days pass. 5 days of Kai's showing up at her door every evening, only to be told by a rotating cast of sympathetic maids that she has already retired for the night. 5 days of him saying politely that he will come back tomorrow and actually doing it. Lariella pokes her head out after he leaves each time and cannot believe what she is seeing. He is still here, in the countryside. Wearing her brother's clothes because he did not pack enough. The maids even sent him burnt meat at lunch to test his patience, and he ate every bite without flinching and asked for lamb at dinner. He is completely unbothered and showing absolutely no signs of leaving. Lariella tells herself it is suffocating. She has a promise to keep with the village children and a storybook to find, and she cannot even move through her own home freely. Reina suggests sneaking out through the back servant's entrance tomorrow morning, since he is unlikely to patrol that side of the house. Lariella lights up. Then she decides she will slip into the study at midnight to grab the book while everyone is asleep. They creep through the hallways in the dark like two people who are absolutely not doing anything suspicious. Reina peels off to find the coachman, and Lariella slips into the study alone. She finds the book quickly and tells herself to just grab it and go. She has already spent too long tiptoeing around her own house. Then her name. She spins around and Kais is standing right there in the study, looking at her like he has been waiting. He tells her he has not been able to sleep and that he comes here every night. She tells him to leave immediately. He smiles and says that it is easier said than done. Seeing her face makes leaving feel impossible. She tells him she has no desire to hear anything he has to say. He tells her she does not have to listen. She can choose never to hear him out for the rest of her life if that is what she wants. But he wants her to know that everything at El Mano has been taken care of. The servants who tormented her have been punished and removed. He worked with her maid to make sure everything would be different. He will never make her cry again. He takes a step closer. She is panicking internally. He is too close, and he is saying things she wanted to hear for months, and she cannot let herself be moved by this. She cannot. She will not. Then he reaches up and gently brushes a strand of hair from her face. He apologizes quietly and says he just wanted to do that. She stands completely frozen, looking at him. He leans in and kisses her. And for one terrible, beautiful moment, she lets him. Her heart is pounding so hard she can barely think. She thinks about how much she wanted this, how long she waited for exactly this, how easy it would be to just let herself believe it is real. Then she drives her elbow into his stomach and shoves him back. Hard. She tells him breathlessly to go do that with Sir Wachlin instead. Kai staggers and stares at her, completely lost. He asks why she is suddenly bringing Wachlin into this. But Lariella is already gone, running back to her room, leaving him standing alone in the study with absolutely no idea what just happened. The next morning, Lariella slips into the carriage early with Reina and tells her to focus on guarding her empty room. Through the guest house window, Kais watches the carriage pull away and says nothing. Out at the village, Lariella sits with the children and reads to them, doing her absolute best not to think about last night. She tells herself she just got caught off guard. It was a moment of weakness. Nothing has changed. She almost convinces herself. Then one of the children shouts Sir Knight and points down the road. Lariella looks up and there he is. Kais, on horseback riding toward them like this is a completely normal thing to do. He dismounts and greets the children warmly, and they swarm around him like he is an old friend. Lariella stares. A little boy named Lalu tells her proudly that Sir Knight gave him a shiny gold coin and has visited his house 5 times. Another child confirms it immediately. 5 times. Lariella looks between the children and the man standing there smiling and feels the ground shift slightly under her feet. She asks him how he knew to find her here. He says he recognized the book she took from the library. She asks how a single book told him where she was going. He just smiles. Then she asks the question she is almost afraid to ask. Has he been here before? He tells her yes. She asks why. He says to see her. He came all the way here just to see her, before they had even been properly introduced, before she had any idea he existed in her world. And because he did not want to intrude, he stood at the window of one of the rooms upstairs and listened to her read to the children from there. He tells her simply that he likes the sound of her voice. Lariella has absolutely no idea what to do with that information. The children and villagers nearby are already whispering and watching with obvious delight, waiting to see what happens next. Kais gestures toward the road and asks if she would like to take a walk, since this conversation might take a while. She looks at the audience they have gathered and decides, absolutely not here. She tells him they can talk back at the estate and climbs into the carriage before he can say another word. He climbs in after her. She asks why he is in her carriage. He sits down across from her and says his legs hurt from riding so far on horseback and that they can talk on the way. The carriage is small, uncomfortably small. She thinks to herself that it feels cramped even when it is just her and Murina sitting across from each other. And now this man with his long legs and his calm expression is sitting right there looking at her like he has nowhere else in the world he would rather be. He tells her, before they continue, that there is something he needs to ask. She waits. He asks why she brought up Wachlin last night. She looks at him and asks if he is really going to pretend he has no idea. He looks genuinely confused and says that whatever she might have found disappointing about him, he needs her to tell him specifically what she means about Walklin. She tells him she saw everything with her own eyes the day Walklin returned from the territory inspection. She saw what they did in the office. Case pauses. Then something crosses his face and he says, "Oh, that." He tells her he never meant to take things that far, but he got carried away. He has been like that since childhood, apparently. He knows it was not appropriate behavior for a noble, and he is not proud of showing her that side of himself. Lariella puts her hand over her head. Since childhood. He is sitting there admitting this like it is a mildly embarrassing habit and not the thing that broke her heart. She thinks about how she fell for someone this ruthless and shameless and cannot decide if she wants to cry or throw something. Case watches her face and quickly promises that no matter how angry Walklin makes him in the future, he will never let himself react that way again. Lariella goes still. She looks at him. He looks back at her. A long pause settles between them. Then she says it very carefully. "Fight with him." So he did not kiss him. Kai stares at her. She watches the exact moment it clicks. His expression shifts from confused to stunned to something approaching complete disbelief. He asks her slowly why she would think he was kissing Walklin. Case looks like he might actually be sick. He repeats the words slowly like they physically pain him. Him and Walklin. Kissing. He tells her he would rather spend his entire life as a eunuch than kiss Walklin. The absolute horror on his face is almost funny. Lariella stares at him and asks if he really did not. He looks at her and asks what on earth she thought she saw in that office. She starts to explain and he listens, and somewhere in the middle of it, the pieces finally fall into place for both of them. What she witnessed was not a kiss. It was a fight. Two grown men who have known each other their entire lives settling an argument the way they apparently always have, with physical force and zero decorum. Lariella sits with that information quietly. All of this. Everything that happened. The letter to her brother. The annulment. The 10 days of crying. Because she thought he was in love with his cousin. Case does not laugh. He looks at her and says he came all this way because he wanted to tell her everything. He asks if she will finally listen. She does not say no, so he talks. He tells her that if he could go back, he would do everything differently. From the very first moment their eyes met, he should have walked over and said hello instead of hovering nearby, hoping she would notice him. When he saw her reading alone in the garden, he should have approached her like a normal person instead of making noise with his footsteps and praying she would look up. He should have given her more than a formal proposal letter and a chest of gold. He should have talked to her. He should have let her in. Instead, he hid behind his own shame and his own fear, and in doing so, he hurt her in ways he is still discovering. He tells her he is sorry. He tells her that from the first moment he saw her, there was never anyone else. He was simply a fool who had never learned how to love someone properly, who had never understood what it meant to have something precious until he had already let it walk out the door. He gets down on one knee right there in the moving carriage, takes her hand, looks straight into her eyes, and asks for one more chance. Lariella looks at this man, the most distinguished noble in all of Baya Roman, the one who always seemed so untouchable and cold, kneeling in front of her with everything stripped away. If this is not sincerity, then nothing in this world is. She kisses him first. Then she tells him fine. She will give the arrogant, foolish Duke one more chance. 2 days later, the four of them stand outside in the early morning light as the carriage waits. Murina and Lariella hold each other, and neither one wants to let go. Roné tells them it is a shame they have to leave so early and wishes they could stay longer. Kais tells him they will come back to visit and adds with complete seriousness that if he ever receives a tear-stained letter from Lariella, he will return immediately and challenge him to a duel to take her back. Lariella looks at her brother and quietly wonders if Kais would actually win that. Kais swears on everything he has that he will never give her a reason to write that letter. Roné and Murina wave them off as the carriage pulls away. The moment they are out of sight, Kais wraps his arms around her from behind. He tells her that the Baron's household is a complete mystery because the second everyone found out they reconciled, not a single person gave them a moment alone together. 2 whole days and they could barely finish a sentence. Lariella laughs and tells him they were just teasing. He says she has no idea how much he suffered through those 2 nights. She admits it was difficult for her too, and that she had things she wanted to ask him as well. He asks, like what? She blushes and asks if it is true he visited Pololu 5 times just to watch her and then leave without saying a word. He looks at her with a small smile and says it was actually 6 times. Then slowly and very deliberately, he picks her up and settles her onto his lap. He tells her he did not just come to watch her and leave. He tells her what he actually did while he was there, sitting at that window listening to her read to the children, and the way he says it makes her want to cover his mouth before he finishes the sentence. So she does exactly that. She presses her hand over his lips. He looks at her with amusement and then very calmly licks one of her fingers. She pulls her hand back immediately. He tells her he has arranged a villa about an hour from Pololei. She asks if they are not going back to Elmano's estate. He tells her he is sorry, but he is not confident he can wait that long. She looks at him. He looks at her. Then they kiss. At the villa, the distance between them that stretched for so long finally disappears completely. Lariella thinks to herself that she has only ever seen him look expressionless and controlled. This is the first time she has seen him look truly impatient. Like a man who has been waiting far longer than any person should have to wait and has finally run out of reasons to hold back. They barely make it through the villa door. The lake out front, the little forest behind it, and whatever else was promised in the description of this place, none of it gets seen. Not even once. At some point during their stay, they make a quiet promise to each other. First names. Just their names, no titles, no distance hiding behind formality. Just Kai's and Lariella. And honestly, that small thing feels like everything after so long. Later, Lariella lies there and thinks about what she actually remembers from their time at the villa. Not the view, not the gardens. Not a single thing about the surrounding landscape was apparently worth traveling an hour outside Pololu for. What she remembers is the bedroom ceiling. The windows were going dark as night came. And Kais. Just Case. For a woman who spent months staring at his back and wondering if he even knew she existed, she thinks that is a perfectly fair trade. Lariella sits in the bathtub and has a very serious internal conversation with the memory of Murina. Specifically, she would like to know why Murina left out the part about exhaustion. She cannot take this anymore. She genuinely needs to rest. This man does not seem to have an off switch, and she is starting to wonder if she made a tactical error giving him that second chance. So she tries something clever. She turns to Kai's with her most sympathetic expression and asks if he found it difficult staying in Pololu all that time. The accommodation was nothing like El Mano after all, and he waited so long. He must be absolutely exhausted. She is practically handing him an excuse to sleep. He thinks about it and says he actually enjoyed himself. She stares at him. He explains that the people of Pololeu did not treat him like the Duke of El Mano. They looked at him like exactly what he was. The terrible husband who had hurt their beloved young lady. No titles, no reverence. Just quiet judgment from every person he passed. And somehow he found that freeing. He was not performing anything. He was just a foolish man waiting for the woman he had hurt and hoping she would let him try again. That was enough. Lariella looks at him and does not have an immediate response to that. Then he kisses her, and she thinks to herself, oh no, not again. She pulls back and tells him to wait. She asks how one person can be so extreme. He went from refusing to hold her hand to being completely attached to her side every moment of the day. And since when did he become so good at saying exactly the right thing at exactly the right moment? He was not like this before. The way René looked at the people he loved, the way he expressed it without hesitation or embarrassment. Kays watched him, took notes, and decided that was exactly how he wanted to be with her from now on. He asks if she does not like it while looking directly into her eyes from a very short distance. She tells him if he says things like that with that particular look on his face, then what does he expect her to say? He says he had no intention of stopping anyway. She does not get another word in after that. Sometime later, Lariella opens her eyes and realizes she fell asleep. She looks over at Kai's sleeping beside her, completely comfortable, completely unbothered, and finds him genuinely infuriating. She reaches over and pinches his face lightly while thinking about what he said earlier. About waiting for her not as Duke El Mano, but as a foolish man with nothing else to worry about but her. She thinks about all the conversations they had during their days at the villa. The cold, arrogant Duke she thought she knew turned out to be something else entirely. A boy who grew up starved of real love, carrying the El Mano name like a weight strapped to his back before he was old enough to understand what it meant. He never learned how to reach for someone. The only thing he knew how to do was keep her close and hope that was enough. It was not enough. But she understands it now. Case opens his eyes slowly and finds her staring at him. He says her name softly. She tells him he must be tired and to go back to sleep. She lies down beside him. He pulls her close. And for the first time since any of this began, they both sleep without anything left unresolved between them. Something has shifted at El Mano Castle. Willis stands watching the garden where Kais and Lariella walk together and says it with quiet wonder. For years, this place has carried a chill that no amount of wealth or grandeur could chase away. Today, it finally feels like spring. Marie fills Lariella in on everything that happened while she was gone, starting with her own near brush with punishment. Apparently, Kais was furious when he found out about the perfume and the nightgowns and came extremely close to lumping Marie in with the servants who were disciplined that day. Wachlin had to physically step in and talk him down. Marie laughs about it now, but the memory clearly still makes her nervous. Lariella tells her firmly that none of it was her fault, and that she would have been devastated to come back and not find her here. Marie lights up completely. And there was quite a lot to come back to. Everyone who used to look down on Lariella has been stripped of their positions and driven out of the duchy. The chambers have been moved to an annex with a clear view of the lake. Lariella was bothered by that at first. Not being in the main house felt like a demotion somehow. But that feeling disappeared rather quickly once she understood just how many people live in the main building and how little privacy that affords. The annex is starting to feel like a gift. Marie mentions that nobody believed at first that the Duke had fallen for her at first sight. The gossip was that Lariella made the whole story up to protect her reputation among the nobles. Then the carriage came back and Kai stepped out carrying her inside, and every single person watching went silent. Marie thinks back to the looks on their faces and smiles. That was the moment everyone finally believed it. Lariella groans and says it was mortifying. Marie very diplomatically says it is completely normal for a lady's legs to go numb after a long carriage ride. Lariella does not correct her. Then Marie mentions the greenhouse. Kai's had it cleared out and restored because he knows how much she loves flowers. Lariella did not even know there was a greenhouse. But before she can process that, she remembers something else entirely: the leisha. She planted it near the main building, and the climate here was never right for it, and she was certain by now the buds would have dried up and died before they ever had the chance to bloom. Marie takes her to see it anyway. The leisha is in full bloom, more beautiful than anything Lariella ever saw of it back in Pololei. She stares at it and asks Marie if she was the one looking after it. Marie shakes her head. It was the Duke. Every single day after he found out how much that plant meant to her, he came out with a watering can and tended to it himself. He made sure it had everything it needed to bloom. Lariella stands there in the garden, completely speechless. Later, she appears at his office window instead of the door. He opens it with a raised eyebrow and tells her the door is not where she is standing, and asks if she got lost. Then she brings her hand from behind her back and holds out a bloom from the Latia. She tells him she loves him, just like that, direct and certain and finally out loud. She explains the tradition from Pololeu. You write the name of the person you love on a Latia seed and plant it. When it blooms, you make a bouquet of the flowers and confess. She wrote his name on this seed. She planted it. And she had quietly decided that even if it never bloomed, she would gather the leaves and confess anyway because she was going to say it one way or another. Then she leans through the window and kisses him on the cheek and thanks him for taking care of it while she was gone. He looks at the bloom in his hand and tells her with complete sincerity that he has never seen a lecha grow this slowly or this clumsily in his entire life. Then he reaches through the window, pulls her up off the ground, and holds her like he never intends to put her down. She looks startled. Then they kiss. He tells her he loves her more. He says he has been wanting to say it and just did not know how to start. And somewhere in the back of his mind, he thinks about how long he walked around carrying this feeling without even having a name for it. All that time. All that distance he put between them. All that pain he caused without meaning to. So this is what love is, Lily. Back in the office, Kais and Lariella are kissing, and she is very aware that anyone could walk in at any moment. She tells him someone will see them. He says, let them. After 10 years of being called impotent and a eunuch, he would very much like the rumor to upgrade to something more accurate. Something involving his lady and considerably less clothing. She tries to protest. He keeps kissing her. Then he tells her he loves her. She tells him she loves him too. Honestly, at this point, resistance seems exhausting. Outside in the garden, Willis catches a glimpse of Kays carrying Lariella past the flower beds. She is telling him to put her down and insisting she can walk perfectly fine on her own. He tells her calmly that if she walks around on her own right now, certain things will become very obvious to anyone watching. She begs him to please just... He keeps walking. Willis watches all of this with the quiet satisfaction of a man who has waited a very long time to see his master this happy. He makes a mental note to have lunch sent to the annex and to make sure they include the lamb dish her ladyship loves. Then Walklin appears and announces he is done waiting. He has been covering Kais's work for days, and today he is dragging him out of that annex, whether he likes it or not. He asks Willis why he is hesitating. Willis looks at him with the expression of a man choosing his words very carefully and asks if perhaps they could endure just a little longer on their own. Walklin stares at him. Willis explains that it has been so long since he has seen the master smile like that. The last time was when he was a small child. Even if it is hard on his aging body, he would like to protect that smile just a little while longer. Walklin looks at him and then looks at the pile of work on the desk, and then back at Willis and asks if anyone in this household cares even slightly about his well-being. He has not even been able to get married yet. Willis tells him with complete sincerity that if it has been too hard on him, he is welcome to take a vacation. Walklin sits down and picks up the documents. He cannot argue with that face, and everyone in the room knows it. A few days later, Lariella stands in front of the mirror while Marie puts the finishing touches on her outfit. It is simpler than anything she has worn before as Duchess, and she asks if it will be appropriate. Marie tells her the Duke himself said she looks most beautiful when she is not overly done up. The new approach is effortless elegance. Then Marie straightens up and delivers her signature declaration that she is Marie Herona, the most exceptional and capable maid in the entire capital, with the gravity of someone announcing a royal decree. Lariella thinks to herself that it is genuinely adorable how serious she looks every single time she says that. Today is the second tea party. The same ladies who attended the first one. The same ones who sat in her home and confirmed with their own eyes that the marriage had not been consummated and then carried that information straight back to high society. If they have any sense at all, they will arrive knowing an apology is owed. They do not arrive knowing that. Within minutes, one of them mentions that Lariella looks like she has lost weight. Another one notes that her complexion seems pale. The Marchioness Mark sits across from her, thinking about how the dress looks even plainer than last time, and the jewelry is minimal. And this country girl who was sold off for a chest of gold is somehow still sitting in the Lady of Elmano's chair. She has been trying to get inside information ever since the staff was replaced, and getting nothing. So she leans in with a sympathetic expression and asks delicately if perhaps the concern is related to the bedroom. The other ladies pick it up immediately. One suggests that noblemen can be a bit inattentive. Another recommends finding a lover and offers the Marchioness as an excellent resource for introductions. The Marchioness confirms that in high society, A lady having a lover or two is barely worth mentioning and tells Lariella to come to her if she needs help. Lariella sets down her teacup. She tells them actually, there is something that has been concerning her. The table leans in collectively. She says it is a little embarrassing to admit, but the truth is that even if she wanted to take a break, she simply would not be able to. He wants to do it constantly, day and night, no pause whatsoever. Was it like this for all of them when they were newlyweds? The table goes completely silent. The Marchioness Mark sits there processing what she just heard. The Duke of Elmano, the man famous across the entire capital for being an impotent eunuch who could not look at a woman without turning away, that man will not stop. Day and night. With the country girl, she was planning to quietly push out of the picture. She stares at Lariella's perfectly calm face and has absolutely nothing to say. Lady Reyna sits in her mansion, turning a crystal champagne flute over in her hands. A gift from the Duchess. Specially made by renowned local artists, and delivered with a note explaining it was the gift she never got to give at that first tea party because of the unfortunate incident. Lady Reyna stares at it and feels deeply uneasy without being able to explain why. Then her husband bursts through the door. He wants to know what she has been doing because they are now the only noble family completely excluded from the trade ship project happening with Elmano. Every family who attended the Duchess's tea party is part of the deal. Every family except theirs. Meanwhile, Lariella sits on the bed surrounded by letters. Long handwritten letters of apology from noble ladies who spent months spreading rumors about her marriage. The Duke apparently withdrew investment plans from every family that participated in the gossip and disrespected the Duchess, with the exception of the Marquess of Devers, who sits high enough in the nobility to be untouchable. The result was swift and total. The women who once ruled high society with their whispers found themselves suddenly isolated from each other and from the deals that mattered. The bond they shared over gossip broke the moment it became expensive. Lariella thinks to herself that she did not expect Kais to go this far. But because of it, the rumors have finally quieted down, and nobles who were previously hesitant to associate with them are now actively sending invitations. She smiles a little. Then she notices Kais is late. Normally by this hour, he would already be knocking on her door in the middle of her bath routine with absolutely no patience whatsoever. She gets up to check the terrace door, which seems to be open, and immediately regrets standing because her legs remind her very clearly about the previous night. Then she sees him, a figure in dark clothes standing on the terrace with a mask covering his face. She freezes. Then she straightens up and tells him to leave immediately. If he goes now, she will pretend she never saw him. The figure smirks and keeps walking toward her. She backs up, and her mind races. Kais is not here. She is alone. Then she remembers something useful. She grabs her skirt and raises her knee with full intention of solving this problem the most direct way possible. He catches her leg midair. She demands he let go. He says, "My goodness," and then adds that her legs have clearly made a full recovery, given the impressive move she just attempted. She knows that voice. She says his name slowly. He confirms he is absolutely not Kais Elmano right now. He is Sir Morini, a knight from the Principality of Escal. She stares at him. He removes the cape from his head, and she sees his hair styled completely differently and announces with a completely straight face that Sir Morini is none other than the Duchess of Elmano's first love. Lariella looks at his hair and starts to realize where this is going. The story then pulls back to the night before. They were in the middle of being intimate, and Lariella was making her exhaustion very clear while he showed absolutely no signs of stopping. Then Kais said something quietly. He asked what would have become of them if he had never figured out the reason for his issue, or if the problem had continued even after bringing her back to the estate. Lariella thought about it and said he probably would have buried himself in work forever with no joy in his life. He agreed. Then she added casually that she probably would have found herself a lover. The room went very still. Kais repeated what she said like he needed to hear it again to confirm it was real. She pointed out that all the noble ladies in high society have at least one. The Marchioness had even offered to make introductions. Kais looked at her with an expression that was several emotions at once, none of them calm, and told her that she was with him and she was out here thinking about getting a lover. Back in the present, Lariella looks at the masked knight standing in her bedroom and puts everything together. She asks if he really did all of this because of what she said that night. He had not mentioned it once since, and she genuinely thought he had forgotten. He had not forgotten a single word. Lariella stares at him and tries to make sense of what is happening. Her husband is her lover and her lover is her husband, and she genuinely does not know what to do with that information. Kais tells her very seriously that if she wants a knight for a lover, he will be a knight. If she wants a servant, he will become a servant. If she wants a bedroom slave, he will find a collar and lie at her feet. He says all of this with complete sincerity and zero embarrassment. She looks at him like he has lost his mind. He tells her he has no intention of sharing even her shadow with another man, but since she was the one talking about taking a lover, he is simply making sure that lover is him. She tells him she never actually said she would do it. He drops to one knee and proposes to her all over again, this time as Sir Morini, knight from the Principality of Ascal, a man who has risked everything to come here and win her heart. He asks if she will accept him as her first lover. Inside his head, he is fully aware of how ridiculous this is. He is also genuinely jealous of an imaginary man who does not exist. The previous day, Lariella is lying on the bed with her legs across Kai's lap, going absolutely nowhere. She looks at the ceiling and asks if he really dislikes hearing about the possible lover that much because it appears she will not be leaving this bedroom anytime soon. Kai sits there and thinks to himself that he is actually relieved she cannot go out tomorrow, but if he said that out loud, she would think he was being ridiculous. And he knows he is being ridiculous. He does not actually distrust her. That is not the problem at all. The problem is the world outside these walls. The noble women who take pride in flirting openly. The men who feel no shame pursuing someone else's wife. And Lariella, who is so genuinely lovely that there is absolutely no chance other men are not noticing her the way he does. So he decides quietly that the best solution is to be a more passionate lover than anything she could possibly imagine finding elsewhere. He will simply make the competition irrelevant. Back in the present, Lariella looks at him kneeling there in his night costume and tries to work out whether this is genuine jealousy or an elaborate joke. She decides the right move is to play along. She straightens up and tells Sir Marini that she grants him permission to become her first lover. He stands and kisses her before she finishes the sentence. She pulls back and tells him that was far too fast. He takes her hand slowly and walks her back against the wall and kisses her again, and this time he does not stop. Something feels different, the mask still covering part of his face. The dim corner of the room instead of their bed. The way he is moving, rougher and more urgent than usual, almost like someone else entirely. She knows it is him. She knows every part of this is him. Lariella wakes up in the morning, looks at Kai sleeping peacefully beside her, and gets angry just looking at him. She slaps him and rolls over. He jolts awake, completely disoriented, and looks around the room, trying to figure out what just happened. Meanwhile, a carriage pulls up to Almano Castle carrying Marquis Pierre Devers and his son, Lord Naidun Devers. The Marquis reminds his son quietly that the new trading ship launches next year and is twice the size of the current one. They nearly lost their place in this investment because of his mother's behavior, and he would very much like to avoid drawing any further attention from the Duke or Duchess. Naidun agrees out loud. Internally, he is seething. He cannot believe they have to bow before some country girl who somehow captured the interest of a man who turned down proposals from actual duchesses, including his own sister. He cannot understand how she managed it. Then he walks into Almano Castle and sees her, and he understands immediately. He just cannot stop staring. Kays notices. His jaw tightens. He thinks to himself that he would very much like to remove the eyes of every man in this room, starting with that one from the Devers family. He keeps his expression pleasant and welcomes everyone inside, directing Willis to escort the guests to their seats and announcing that the finest tea from their last shipment has been prepared. As Naidun passes, he stops him and asks with a calm smile if there was some business he wished to discuss. Naidun says no and moves along quickly. Case watches him go and thinks that for someone who cannot keep his eyes where they belong, he certainly acts like he owns the room. He turns to Lariella and suggests she go upstairs and rest. She worked hard preparing for today, and she is tired from yesterday as well. She does not need to come back down when the guests leave either. Lariella shakes her head and says she is perfectly fine. Standing there to see the guests off is the minimum expected of the Lady of Almano Castle, and she intends to do it. Case holds her face in his hands and looks at her, and says nothing out loud. What he is thinking is that she has absolutely no idea how many pairs of eyes followed her across that room, and he has no intention of giving those men another opportunity. He tells her instead that the meeting will run at least 3 or 4 hours and offers to read to her in the library in the meantime. Her face changes immediately when he mentions a book she has been struggling with. He promises to send someone to get her before the guests leave. She agrees but points a finger at him on the way out. She is still angry about yesterday. He left marks, and she had to change her entire outfit for the occasion, and she wants him to know that physical contact is suspended until further notice. She says it very seriously. He watches her walk away toward the library. 4 hours later, Lariella is deep into her book with only a few pages left when she hears a knock. She calls out that she is coming. The door opens, and a maid she does not recognize pushes inside carrying a cup of tea. Lariella asks when the guests are leaving. The maid tells her they left half an hour ago. Lariella turns around slowly and asks why she is only being told now. The maid introduces herself as Letty, a newly assigned attendant, and offers a very composed apology for the oversight. She says the tea was prepared with great care as an expression of that apology. Lariella stares at her. Then it clicks. She asks if this is another one. The maid confirms that her guess is correct, and explains that the tea was brought from a faraway land across the sea, and that if the Duchess drinks it, it shall be taken as acceptance of a second lover. Lariella picks up the cup and then immediately sets it back down. She points out that she was told the tea was an apology. Kai smiles and says there is no rule that says a cup of tea can only hold one meaning. Lariella sets the record straight. She is still sore from her husband and her first lover combined. She was so hoarse this morning that she could barely greet their guests properly. Her bedchambers are already overcrowded with 2 of him, and she strongly suggests Letty give up and go home. Kais picks up the teacup to leave and mentions casually that this is the first tea he has ever personally brewed in his life. He went to the kitchen himself and selected every tea leaf by hand, but of course, if she does not want it, he completely understands. Lariella watches him move toward the door. She tells him it is not that she does not want it, It is what drinking means. He turns back and says with complete sincerity that he never had any intention of entering her bedchambers as Letty. He only wanted to bring her warm tea while she reads, help her choose books, copy out passages she finds difficult, and spend some quiet time with her. That is all. But since she has refused, he will take his leave. He reaches for the cup again. She stops him. She asks if he really brewed it himself. He smiles at her and says nothing. She looks at the cup and looks at him and knows she has already lost this particular argument. L'Ariella tells him to go ahead and throw it out then. Kais puts on the most genuinely devastated expression she has ever seen on a grown man and says that, of course, if she will not drink it, then it must be thrown away. He prepared it for her, but he understands completely. He reaches for the cup with the energy of someone accepting a great tragedy. She thinks about the fact that this man went to the kitchen, personally, selected individual tea leaves with his own hands. Kais Elmano, who has never done anything in a kitchen in his entire life, stood there and brewed her tea himself. She was not planning to let him get away with this little game. She really was not. But that face. That quietly disappointed face is doing something to her resolve that she resents deeply. She picks up the cup. She tells him fine. However, there are conditions. Not the bedchambers. Only here in the library. He agrees immediately. She is not finished. She reminds him that, whatever role he is playing right now, he is also a servant, and servants do not put their hands on their lady without explicit permission. He agrees, though something in his expression flickers. She continues. The same rule applies to his lips. And his tongue. If he can agree to all of that, then she will accept him as her second lover. She finishes with the satisfaction of someone who has just won. Kai stands there in his maid disguise and pouts. She found the exact loophole and walked straight through it without hesitation. He thinks to himself that she is genuinely remarkable, and not entirely in a way that is comfortable for him right now. Then, he straightens up and promises with complete formality that he will not lay his hands, lips, or tongue upon her person until she gives permission. He says it like a knight swearing an oath. Then he reaches into his pocket and produces a feather. L'Ariella looks at it and then looks at him and asks what exactly he plans to do with that. He tells her he plans to write. She points out that he has no paper. He tells her she will find out soon enough. She finds out soon enough. Now Caius is sitting across from her, cutting up her food and feeding it to her because she has genuinely run out of the physical energy required to operate a fork. She tells him at this rate, she will not have the strength to hold cutlery. He tells her not to worry because he can cut everything for her, and she should conserve her strength for her lovers. Then he suggests a coachman as her next one. Someone rough and strong. Someone who tames wild horses. He thinks she would really enjoy that. L'Ariella puts down whatever dignity she has left and tells him she is sorry. She will never mention lovers again for as long as she lives. She swears it on the Polaleo family name. Please just stop. He thinks about it. Then he hands her an envelope. She looks at it, confused. He tells her it is an invitation to the ball at Count Valaire's estate, the place where they first met. Her face changes immediately. He says Count Valere is not only his closest business partner, but also hosts the most celebrated balls in all of high society. He thinks it is a perfect choice for their first ball together this year. She agrees immediately and says it sounds wonderful. What he does not tell her is that he has already arranged for fireworks, and that he has had a Lechia necklace made, and that he intends to find the garden where she used to sit and read, the exact spot where he stood at a window watching her without the courage to say hello, and propose to her there all over again. Properly this time. But first, there is something concerning. In the days leading up to the ball, L'Ariella is not well. Marie notices it immediately. She looks more drained than usual, and there is a discomfort she keeps brushing off. L'Ariella tells her it is just the season changing, and that she will be fine. She makes Marie promise not to say a word to Kais because he will cancel the ball without a second thought, and she is not willing to let that happen. Marie agrees and quietly calls for a doctor anyway. The night of the ball at the Valeri estate, the murmurs start the moment they walk in, people pointing, whispering, and saying she captured the Duke of Elmano himself, that he was never actually impotent, that they suit each other perfectly. Nobles who ignored her or talked behind her back last year are now approaching with warm smiles, telling her how stunning she looks and how elegant she seems. L'Ariella smiles through every interaction, but inside things are not right. She managed to hold herself together through the carriage ride, but now, with the crowd pressing in and the mixed smell of perfume, flowers, and alcohol flooding the air, she is struggling to breathe properly. Everything feels overwhelming and suffocating at once. Kays notices immediately. He leans in and asks if she is all right. She tells him the champagne went to her head and asks if they can step outside to the garden. Before they can move, a Viscount Woodley appears and pulls Kais aside about a letter regarding the trade ship business that has gone unanswered. L'Ariella tells Kais to finish his conversation and that she will head to the garden and wait. He tells her not to stray too far and that he will be there in moments. She tells him not to worry. She finds a bench in the garden, slips off her shoes, and exhales. She tells herself she will survive now. But she has never felt this unwell at a social event before, and that thought sits uncomfortably in the back of her mind. Then something rustles in the bushes nearby. She looks up, expecting Kais. But the figure standing there is not quite right. She squints in the dim garden light. Sir Marini? No. She looks again. Is that Kai's? Lariella stares at the figure stepping out of the bushes, and her first thought is that Kai's has somehow changed clothes and prepared another elaborate surprise. The outfit looks exactly like something Sir Marini would wear. She calls out the name hesitantly. The man removes his mask. And it is absolutely not Kai's. He introduces himself as Sir Morris and tells her she is even more beautiful than the rumors described. Lariella backs away immediately. He steps closer and mentions that the Marchioness Devers told him about her particular preferences, that this is apparently the sort of role-playing she enjoys. He says he is perfectly happy to play along. Then he reaches out and grabs her. And something goes very wrong. Her legs stop working, her mouth stops opening. The words she needs to say, stop, get away, do not touch me, none of them come out. The air feels like it has left the garden entirely, and she cannot hear anything properly, and the world is tilting sideways, and then she is on the ground. Kais arrives seconds later. He shoves Morris aside without a word and drops down beside her, calling her name over and over. Lily, open your eyes. Lily. In the background, the fireworks he arranged weeks ago go off exactly on schedule, lighting up the sky above the garden in colors he had imagined showing her while slipping a Lacia necklace around her neck. Instead, he is holding her unconscious on the ground while everything he planned burns bright and beautiful above them without her seeing any of it. Back at El Mano, Lariella is in bed, and the physician, Marie, and his assistant are all inside the room. Kai stands in the hallway and cannot make himself pace because pacing would mean not watching the door. She did not wake up during the emergency treatment at Valère. She did not wake up during the entire carriage ride home. The physician has been in there too long, and Kays cannot stop thinking about every moment he was not paying close enough attention to how she was feeling. He calls himself a fool quietly, and means it completely. Wachlin appears and tells him the interrogation is finished. Kays asks who that man was. Wachlin tells him to calm down first and then explains. Morris is not an officially knighted noble. He is closer to a wandering mercenary with a decent face and a talent for charming women. Noble ladies apparently use him as a lover on a semi-regular basis. The Marchioness Devers had arranged to introduce him to a new client that evening, and he was waiting in the garden exactly as instructed. When Lariella called out to him using a name that was almost but not quite right, he assumed she was the lady he was meant to meet and greeted her accordingly. Then she fainted. He has been insisting ever since that he did nothing wrong and that she simply collapsed on her own and is apparently crying about how unfair the whole situation is. Case thinks about the woman who drove her elbow into his stomach the first time he approached her in a dark room. That woman fainted on her own in a garden? He says out loud that it is preposterous. Wachlin admits it does seem unbelievable. Case asks if they should kill Morris now. Wachlin says, shall we then? Kai says not before breaking every bone in his body and sealing every opening with wax and stuffing him into a jar and dropping him into the middle of the ocean. Wachlin starts to say that it seems like a lot, and then looks at Kai's face and immediately agrees and offers to source the jar personally. Then the bedroom door opens. The physician steps out and tells Kais that the examination is complete and that Lariella just woke up. Kais exhales for what feels like the first time in hours. Then he asks what happened. Was she hurt? Did she contract something? The physician says no. No injuries, no illness. She is in perfect health. Kais asks why she collapsed then and says that man must have done something. The physician looks at him and says the Duchess did not faint because of anyone else's actions. The Duchess is with child. The hallway goes completely silent. Wachlin's mouth opens. Kai stares at the physician and asks him to repeat that. The physician confirms it. Judging by how far along she is, they should be able to hold the baby before summer ends. Congratulations, Your Grace. Then he adds that early pregnancy carries risk, and physical intimacy should be avoided as it places significant strain on the body. Today's collapse was most likely caused by exactly that. Kaya stands very still and realizes that the person responsible for his wife fainting at a ball is him. Not Morris. Him. Wachlin looks at him with the expression of a man who has been patient for a very long time and says he did mention that moderation was important. Kais tells him he is the one who should be in a cell right now. Wachlin turns to a nearby servant and tells them to go ahead and release Morris. The servant hurries off. Everyone looks at the bedroom door. Wachlin nudges him and tells him to stop standing there and go inside. He was clearly terrified. Kai says he should. Wachlin tells him that becoming a father is a happy occasion and that the baby will certainly take after its mother and be beautiful, kind, and wonderful. Kai says yes. He is sure it will. Then he opens the door. Lariella is lying in bed, and the moment she sees him, she says his name. Just his name. And he crosses the room and goes to her, because there is nowhere else in the world he would rather be. Kais kneels beside her bed and just looks at her. She asks if he was shocked. He says yes. Deathly so. She smiles and asks if that means he is happy enough to die because they are having a baby. He tells her he is happy, and then he tells her he is afraid. He says it quietly and honestly in the way he has only recently learned to speak. When he was lost in the darkest parts of himself, unable to love or be loved by anyone, the only thing he could do was keep her close, because she was the only light he could find. But that darkness hurt her too. It was only after she pulled him out of it that he started living like an actual person. Seeing her go pale at the ball tonight dragged all of that fear back up from somewhere he thought he had buried it. He is afraid the darkness is still there, waiting for a weak moment. He is afraid that if something happens to her because of the baby, he might resent the child for it. He is afraid he is more like his father than he wants to believe. A man who did not know how to love. A man who was jealous of his own son. What if he cannot love anyone who is not her? What if she watches him fail at this and loses faith in him completely? Lariella takes his hands. She tells him she knows exactly who he is, and that person is not capable of what he is describing. He is the most loving person she has ever known, and she is completely certain he will love their child just as much as he loves her. She believes that without any doubt. Then she takes his face in her hands and starts painting him a picture of what their life is going to look like. If they have a son, when he turns 4, Kais will teach him to hold a wooden sword. A little older, and he will teach him to ride. He will take him on hunts and teach him everything a great noble should know about dignity and virtue. And if they have a daughter, Kais is not allowed to get even slightly frustrated, no matter what she asks of him. If she wants to tie his hair up in a ridiculous way, he will sit still and let her. If she drags a tiny chair over and demands he sit at her little table for a tea party, he will sit at that table. If she wants him to be her first dance partner before her first ball, he will extend his hand without hesitation, and he will mean it. That is what loving a child looks like. Is that so difficult? He looks at her and says no. It is not difficult at all, he promises. And this time, when Kais Elmano makes a promise, it means something. In the months that follow, he keeps every part of it. He reads to her, he sits with her, he makes sure she is never without what she needs. He is present in a way he never learned to be until she taught him how. And when the day finally comes and she gives birth to a boy, Kai stands outside the room listening to the first cry of his child with an expression nobody in the Elmano household has ever seen on his face before. He walks through the door and finds Lariella lying there, exhausted and beautiful, holding their son against her chest. She looks up and says his name. He crosses the room and wraps his arms around both of them and stays there. Years pass. A painter sits across from the Elmano family, trying his best to capture what he is looking at and privately wondering if he will ever encounter subjects this beautiful again in his lifetime. Case and Lariella sit together with their children around them, and the painter thinks they are genuinely a feast for the eyes. Their son, Lipenser, asks his father if they will practice swordsmanship again today. Case tells him, of course, but first they should respect the painter's time. Lipenser straightens up immediately. Then Lariella flinches slightly, and Case notices before anyone else does. He tells the painter they will stop for today and to arrange the next session through the butler. He lifts the little one from Lariella's arms without being asked, and the painter packs up his things and leaves, thinking that whatever conversations happen inside a household this beautiful must be equally refined and elegant. Filled with wisdom and grace and the quiet dignity of two people who look like they were painted by someone who loved them. He would be completely wrong about that. Back in the office, Kais and Lariella are doing what they have always done best together, and it is neither refined nor elegant. It is loud and warm and completely full of love and has been every single day since a stubborn country girl refused to let a cold, broken duke push her out of his life without a fight. The final image is simple. Kais, Lariella, Lipenser, and 2 more children who came after him. A family that should never have happened, built by 2 people who almost missed each other entirely, living a life that neither of them ever thought they were allowed to have. The story is not quite finished yet because there is someone who has been quietly holding everything together from the very beginning, and she deserves her own moment. Late one night, while the capital streets buzz with light and laughter, Marie sits with a memory she has never told anyone about. A night that meant everything to her and nothing she was allowed to keep. She thinks to herself that it may have been just an evening of amusement for him, but for her, it is something she will carry forever. She apologizes to him silently and asks him not to remember her because when morning comes, she goes back to being just Marie, the maid in the gray uniform. Back in the present, Marie walks through the capital with the confidence of someone who has earned every step. She visits a small workshop that most people have never heard of, and the shopkeeper is nearly overwhelmed that she came at all. Marie tells him that fame is not what matters. Skill is what matters. She leaves with what she came for, and the shopkeeper dissolves into grateful tears behind her, promising to make even better shoes next time and begging her to return. She walks and thinks about who she is now. Marie Herona, the most sought-after personal maid in the capital. She knows every fashion trend in high society before it arrives. Her eye for dressing a lady is unmatched. Every noble who has hired her has left satisfied, and her letters of recommendation have become almost embarrassingly glowing. She was given the opportunity to serve the lady of the most distinguished house in the empire. The Duke's impossible standards broke every fashion rule she knew, and somehow that chaos turned her mistress into one of the most admired duchesses in high society and turned Marie into the woman setting the trends everyone else follows. She supposes she might actually be a little grateful for that. She heads toward the duchess's room and stops outside the door. The sounds from within tell her everything she needs to know. She pulls out her list of duties: companion and confidant, assisting with outfits and jewelry, accompanying the lady to social gatherings. None of these are currently possible. She notes internally that His Grace is stuck to her side all day and makes it genuinely difficult to fulfill any of her responsibilities. She will come back when the bell rings. She goes to her room, lies down, and finds that resting does not come naturally to her at all. She sits up and looks around the room and realizes it has always felt this empty. She just never noticed before because she was always too busy. She thinks about Kai's and Lariella and the life they have built and feels something quiet and wistful stir in her chest. She wonders if she will ever find something like that. Then she thinks about every noble marriage she has witnessed up close as a maid, the husbands and the affairs, the wives and their arrangements, the pristine public faces and the chaos behind closed doors. Whatever illusions she once had about love were dismantled one by one, the longer she worked in noble houses. What Kai's and Lariella have is not normal. It is genuinely rare, and she knows it. The bell finally rings, and she exhales with relief and heads back immediately. Lariella greets her with an apology and shows her the marks Kai's left that have made the carefully chosen dress completely unwearable for the public. Marie looks at them and thinks internally that His Grace really ought to know better than to leave evidence in visible places. Out loud, she says it cannot be helped because he simply adores her too much. Then Lariella says something unexpected. She mentions there probably will not be many reasons to wear beautiful dresses until at least the spring ball season. Marie freezes and asks if she is being sent away. Lariella looks horrified and tells her absolutely not. She considers Marie her closest friend at Almano Castle. Then she clarifies. She wants Marie to take a vacation. A proper one. Things are going to stay quiet for a while, and Marie should go home and rest before the spring season buries them both in preparations. Marie says she is fine. Lariella points out it has been a very long time since she went home. Then she picks up the dress that was meant for her today and holds it in front of Marie and tells her honestly that the color suits someone else better anyway. She turns Marie toward the mirror and says she thinks it suits this person right here. Then she presses it into Marie's hands, and the shoes she bought today, those two. Because a lady's look is only complete when the shoes peek subtly from beneath the hem as she walks, and Marie said that herself. Marie stands there holding a beautiful dress and matching shoes that were chosen with genuine care and feels something crack open in her chest in the best possible way. She tells Lariella this is the first gift she has ever received with such a heartfelt meaning behind it. Lariella tells her no, she should be thanking Marie for always being by her side. Then she tells her to go and enjoy herself, but to come back because she will be waiting. Marie starts crying. Lariella tells her to hold it together or her eyes will swell up. Marie cries anyway. She walks out of Almano Castle with her bag and her new dress, and her tears still coming quietly when she nearly walks into Wachlin. He looks at her and says so. She is crying again. She looks up and says his name. He remembers the last time he saw her cry, standing in Kai's office, defending her mistress with everything she had, shaking but refusing to back down. He has thought about that moment more than he would admit to anyone. He thinks to himself that they only ever seem to find each other in moments exactly like this one. She thanks him for stepping in that day. He says if he had not, it would have been a serious problem, and asks if the reason she is crying now means His Grace is in the annex again. She tells him no, he is heading to his study. She can tell he is teasing her. He tells her that if things are difficult, she can always come to him and talk. She looks at him and sees exactly what he is. Handsome in a way that is almost unfair. Kind to everyone without exception. Charming in that effortless way that costs him nothing because he has never had to try. He knows what he does to women, and he has never turned one away who came to him willingly. She knows this type completely. She has dressed enough noble ladies before to know exactly how these stories end. She thanks him for his concern, tells him she is fine, and says she has somewhere to be. Then she walks away. He watches her go and says nothing. And for once, Wachlin, who always has something charming ready, finds that he has nothing to say at all. The carriage rolls into the Herona Viscounty, and Marie steps down and stands in front of her family home for the first time in a very long while. She exhales. Then she walks to the door. An older maid named Louisa greets her with the kind of warmth that only comes from someone who has known you your whole life. She ushers Marie inside immediately, and Marie asks about her knee before she even gets through the door. Louisa says things wear down as you age, but she is managing. Marie smiles and says nothing about what she is really thinking. Louisa has worked in this house since before Marie's father was born. She is old and fragile, and running an entire estate by herself. The reason nobody has hired help is because there is simply no money left. Her father's business collapsed years ago, and he has been at the bottom of a bottle ever since. Marie has been sending half her salary home every single month, and there is still no sign of improvement. Her younger sister, Elaine, comes rushing down the stairs with her brilliant red hair and her easy smile, wanting to know why Marie has been away so long and why she has to hear news about her own sister from other people. Marie looks at her and thinks about how she has always loved dressing Elani more than herself. She was always the more beautiful one. The dress Lariella gave her today would honestly look better on Eleni anyway. Then their mother appears. Her first questions are practical. Why did Marie come back without warning? What is in the bag? Was she fired? Marie explains that the Duchess gave her a vacation and provided travel money for the trip. Her mother relaxes and says she was actually about to reach out because something has come up, and this timing is convenient. She sits them both down. She passes over a letter. A marriage proposal from Count Parker's family. Not the second son, the eldest son, the heir, Lucian Parker. Marie picks it up and asks if this is for her. Eleni blushes. Their mother clarifies without hesitation that obviously the proposal came for Elaine. Something cold moves through Marie. She reminds her mother of the rule she was raised on her entire life. Sisters marry in birth order. She was told she had to wait until every older sister was married before she could even consider her own future. She handed over every coin she had saved to fund those dowries because she believed that rule meant something. That her turn was coming. Her mother waves it away and asks what she expected when not a single proposal had come from Marie. Marie thinks about the noble ladies who told her privately they admired her and were considering sending proposals, the families they mentioned, the introductions they promised. None of it ever reached her mother in any form she recognized. She starts to mention Baroness de Lysion specifically. Her mother cuts her off to comment on how drab Marie looks, arriving home dressed the way she is. She says it is no wonder proposals have not come. At her age, looking and carrying herself this way, what does she honestly expect? Marie goes quiet. She has had this conversation before in various forms. After her father fell apart, her mother needed somewhere to put the anger that was building, and Marie looked too much like him to escape it. She has told herself for years to be patient and understanding, that her mother is struggling, that once things improve, she will go back to the person she used to be. So Marie endures it. She always has. Then her mother says she is truly sorry things worked out this way, but she cannot let Eleni miss a match this good. She asks Marie to be understanding. Then she asks Marie to handle the dowry. Marie's hands clench together in her lap. She has already paid for all of her older sisters. She has almost nothing left. She says so. Her mother tells her that if she was going to make a fuss about it, she should not have offered the money in the first place. Then she asks why Marie is so upset about her younger sister marrying well. Is she really that resentful? Eleni looks at Marie with an expression that makes it clear she knows exactly what is happening and hates that she cannot stop it. Marie drops her head. She asks quietly what the dowry amount would need to be for Count Parker's family. Her mother says 200 gold. Marie looks up. 200 gold. Even 2 full years of uninterrupted work at the highest salary she has ever earned would not be enough. She starts to say so. Her mother's expression shifts into something almost patient, and she says that the word in high society is that the Duchess of Elmano is very fond of Marie. She is a naive country girl, apparently. Her mother suggests Marie use that relationship. Sweet talker. Ask for an advance. Once she understands the situation, she will surely agree. Marie sits across from her mother, and the room goes very quiet inside her head. Marie says nothing. She sits with her hands pressed together and her eyes burning, and gives her mother absolutely nothing to work with. Marie tells her mother no. She cannot make that kind of request of the Duchess. It would be rude, and she will not do it. Her mother's patience runs out immediately. She asks if Marie wants the family to fail. If Eleni becomes a countess, their father can reclaim his standing. Does Marie want them to stay low-ranking nobles forever? Is she really going to ruin everything because of her pride? Marie looks at her mother with tears running down her face and asks if she honestly looks like this is about pride. Her mother goes quiet for just a moment. Marie keeps going. By the time she earns enough for Eleni's dowry and then saves anything for herself, she will be nearly 30. There will be no decent marriage prospects left for her by then, and her mother knows it. Her mother says the reply to Count Parker's family has already been sent. What does she expect them to do now? Marie tells her to go back to the Count's family and explain honestly that the dowry cannot be prepared. The proposal is recent enough that they will understand. Her mother stares at her like she has suggested something criminal. Withdraw the acceptance. Make the family a laughingstock. Throw away a chance for her daughter to become a countess. She cannot believe what she is hearing. Marie sits there with tears streaming and thinks something she has known since she was very young. Not all children receive the same love. Some are given everything their parents have and more. Others receive so little and are still told they should be grateful for it. She thinks it would have been better if her mother had simply never loved her at all. Then she would not have spent her whole life hoping for something that was never going to come back. Her mother calls her selfish, says she takes after her father, tells her to say right now that she will do what was asked of her. Marie stands up. Her mother flinches. Marie looks at her and says that Eleni is not the only daughter she has. She is also her daughter. Then she walks out. Her mother sits holding her head. Eleni watches Marie go and says nothing. Marie goes to her room, slams the door, lies down on the bed, and thinks about how miserable it is to be back in the house she was born and raised in. She has been gone a long time and she already wants to go back to Elmano. She sits up and looks at the room around her. It is so small. It does not come close to the room she has at Elmano Castle. She thinks about how even the size of this room is a reflection of how much she is valued here. That thought hurts more than she expected. Then there is a knock. Eleni opens the door and comes in carrying Marie's bag, holding it out quietly. Marie thanks her. Eleni asks if they can talk for a moment. Marie asks about what. Then Eleni drops to her knees on the floor and looks up at her sister and says she does not know what to do. She says she is scared. Scared enough that she feels like she might die. Marie holds her immediately and asks what is wrong. Eleni tells her. She slept with Lord Lucian. The Countess found them, in bed together. Marie goes very still. In Baya Roman, women having lovers is not entirely uncommon, but it only applies to women who are already married. For an unmarried noble girl, the consequences of something like this becoming public are devastating. Not just for her, but for her entire family. Lucian apparently told Alani it was fine because he was planning to propose anyway, but the Countess doubled the dowry from 100 gold to 200 as punishment, and made it clear that even if the money is produced, she will never approve the marriage. And if the money is not produced, she will spread word through all of high society that Alani is impure. Marie asks Alani how she let things get so far out of hand. Alani says she just liked him so much. She wanted to hold on to him. She was trying to do things the right way, and then it just happened. She says their mother does not know. Marie is the only person she has told. She begs her sister to help her. She says she might actually die if this is not fixed. Marie tells her to get out. Eleni looks up in shock. Marie holds her head and says please, she is begging her, just get out. Eleni leaves. The door closes. Marie slides down onto the floor. She sits there and thinks about how well Eleni knows her. She already knows exactly what choice Marie will make because Marie has never in her life been able to walk away from someone who needed her. She is not the kind of person who abandons family for her own happiness. She never even allowed herself to hope for a love that was complete and real. She just wanted a normal life, something ordinary in hers. That was all she asked for. And now she cannot even hope for that. She starts unbuttoning her dress slowly. Her chest hurts in a way that has nothing to do with anything physical. She opens her bag and looks at everything inside. The dress Lariella gave her. The shoes. All of it chosen with more genuine care than anything her own family has offered her in years. She realizes the bag is now full of gifts she will end up giving to Eleni, because that is how her life works. She presses her hands into her hair and starts crying properly. She thinks that if she keeps living faithfully and honestly and selflessly, she will end up being used until she is eventually married off to whatever aging nobleman is willing to take her. If her life is going to be ruined either way, she would rather be the one making the decision. That night, Marie stands at the window dressed in something entirely different from the Grey Maid's uniform. Something that belongs to a different version of herself. One that is done waiting. Marie steps out of the carriage and looks at the street in front of her. She has been all over the capital working as a maid, but she has never come here. Endka. The street that knows no night. Nobles, knights, wealthy merchants, courtesans, and artists all gathered in one place to indulge in everything the city has to offer until dawn breaks. She looks around and immediately notices people glancing at her as she walks. She wonders if her makeup is wrong. Then she tells herself this is not the time for that. She thinks about what she decided back in that small room. Once she provides Alani's dowry, she will either never marry or be sold into a marriage like a bargaining chip at whatever price her family can negotiate. She cannot bring herself to resent them for it. Resentment changes nothing. But if she is already going to be considered impure by her own choice, if she decides on her own terms that she will not enter into a noble engagement, if she chooses to live by her own will rather than wait to be handed over, then maybe this will feel just a little less unfair. And beyond all of that, she has spent years dressing noble ladies and understanding everything about intimacy in theory without ever once experiencing any of it herself. She thinks about what Murina described once to a nervous bride. The moment of overwhelming sensation. The stars behind your eyes. Even if marriage is no longer something she can hope for, maybe one experience like that would be enough to carry her through the lonely nights ahead. She stands outside a tavern and tells herself she cannot just walk in and sleep with anyone. If she is going to do this, she wants it to be with the most handsome person there. She peers through the window of a smaller establishment. Fewer people, calmer atmosphere. She can do this. She opens the door and immediately thinks she was completely wrong about it being calm, because there are far more people inside than the exterior suggested. She makes her way to the bar, sits down, and tries to work out what to do next. Does she approach someone first or wait to be approached? She has never attempted to seduce anyone in her life and has absolutely no idea where to begin. She glances around the room and then goes completely still. Wachlin is right there. She looks away immediately. She needs to leave right now. She stands up and starts moving toward the door too quickly, and her foot catches on something, and she tumbles directly into a man named Baron Darroch, who grabs her before she can right herself. She apologizes immediately. He does not let go. He tells her she came running to him herself and asks why she is acting so proper about it now. She tells him it was an accident and tries to pull free. He pulls her closer, smells her hair, and says a young woman walking around a place like this alone at night is obviously there for one thing. He is not wrong about why she came, but there is no version of this where she wants anything to do with him. She bites his hand. He yells and releases her, and she stumbles back. Now he is furious and announcing that he is going to teach her a lesson tonight. Marie stands there and thinks about everything that has gone wrong today, and wonders what she possibly did to deserve any of it. Tears start coming before she can stop them. Then Darroch raises his hand, and Wachlin appears out of nowhere and grabs him. He tells Darroch quietly and very clearly that if he continues this behavior, he will personally drag him out and make him beg on his hands and knees. He gives him one alternative. Apologize to the lady and walk away. Darroch looks at Wachlin and then looks at the Almano sigil on his chain, and the calculation happens immediately. He apologizes to Marie and disappears into the crowd so fast he practically evaporates. Joaquin turns to Marie and asks if she is all right. She says yes. Then he starts laughing. Not unkindly, but genuinely amused, and she feels her face go completely red. Of every person in this city on this particular night, she got caught here by him. He looks at her and suggests she probably needs a drink first, and asks if she would prefer water or something stronger. She stares at him. He extends his hand toward her like a gentleman offering to escort someone he has just met. She realizes something. He does not recognize her. She is dressed differently, her hair is different, and her whole presence in this place is nothing like the composed, gray-uniformed maid he has seen at Elmano Castle. He has no idea who she is. Marie looks at his outstretched hand and thinks for just a moment about what it would mean to take it. An hour earlier, Joaquin sits alone at a table in the tavern with his whole body aching and his patience completely depleted. The budget allocation that should have been handled weeks ago only got done today, because the Duke refused to come out of the bedroom for an unreasonable stretch of time, and everything downstream got delayed accordingly. Joaquin is exhausted and mildly resentful and entirely sober, which is its own kind of problem. Earlier, his knight suggested his usual salon. Apparently young ladies have been frequenting it lately. Joaquin told them no. He wants to rest tonight. Both attendants stared at him like he announced he was retiring to a monastery. One of them made a sound that was not quite a word. Joaquin ignored them. Now he sits here drinking and thinking about how he has somehow reached the point in his life where Joaquin Elmano is turning down women because of Kais. Because that man fell completely and catastrophically in love with his own wife and decided that managing the actual work of running an estate was optional as long as Lariella was nearby. Joaquin shakes his head. He never had the slightest interest in anyone, and now he cannot be separated from her for a full working day. How did this even happen? Joaquin thinks about love the way he has always thought about it. Something so light it barely registers. Calling it love at all seems generous. His usual approach is one night, occasionally two, and then everyone moves on with their lives without pretending the arrangement was something more meaningful than it was. He has always found that honest. People who dress up physical desire in the language of love and then act surprised when the illusion breaks are doing it to themselves. He has never understood why anyone would choose that. He has always been perfectly happy living without it. And yet lately, something has been nagging at him that he cannot quite name. He blames Kais entirely. He looks around the tavern and notices the noise level has dropped slightly. Then he spots her. A woman sitting at the bar who is clearly dressed too well for someone who knows what they are doing here, and shrinking back in a way that makes it obvious she has never set foot in a place like this before. He looks at her and thinks she is either here for a one-night encounter or completely lost. One look is enough to tell him she is naive. Then she glances toward him, and something flickers in his memory. He feels like he has seen those eyes somewhere before, but he cannot place them, and he has certainly never spent the night with anyone this visibly unprepared for the experience. Then he sees Baron Darroch get involved and mentally decides not to interfere. Darroch is notorious and unpleasant, but it is not his business. Then she shouts for him to let her go, and she tumbles, and Darroch raises his hand, and Joaquin is on his feet before he has consciously decided to move. He grabs Darroch's hand and delivers the ultimatum quietly and clearly. Darroch looks at the Almano sigil and makes the sensible choice. He leaves. Joaquin stands there afterward, thinking about how his body moved entirely without his permission and wondering what exactly is wrong with him tonight. He turns to her. She says she is all right with tears still running down her face and a hiccup she cannot suppress. He thinks to himself that anyone can see she is obviously not all right. He asks if she would like water or something stronger. She looks at him quietly for a moment, and he wonders internally if offering alcohol in this situation was the wrong call. Then she says alcohol. He did not expect that. They end up at his table across from each other. He asks if they have met before because something about her keeps nagging at him. She gets flustered immediately and says no, definitely not. This is absolutely the first time she has ever seen him. She is certain of it. He looks at her and says, her dark eyes are unusual. Most redheads have lighter coloring, but hers are deep and striking. He asks what brings her to Enka Street because a woman who looks as composed as she does not usually come here alone looking for company. He starts mentally calculating the least complicated way to send her safely home. City guards, perhaps. Someone responsible. Then he watches her thinking and sees something shift in her expression. She is working something out. He does not know what it is. Marie looks at him and makes a decision she will take to her grave. She knows exactly who he is. She knows his reputation and his habits and the way he moves through the world, leaving no lasting impressions and asking for none in return. He is not dangerous. He is someone she trusts in the specific way you trust a person who will forget you by morning and feel no guilt about it. There is no one in all of Enka better suited for what she came here to do. And he genuinely does not recognize her, so she looks at him and tells him the truth. She came here on her own to find someone to spend the night with. He stares at her. Then something in his expression shifts from assessment to something more like genuine interest. She seems naive, but she just said that without flinching. Clumsy, but there is an unexpected steadiness underneath it. The more he looks at her, the more he finds he cannot stop looking. He tells her he thinks he just found the right man for the situation and asks what she thinks. He holds out his hand. She looks at it. He lifts it and presses his lips to her knuckles and says with pleasure, and neither of them says another word about going out. In a room above the tavern, what Marie came to Enka for actually happens. And it is nothing like she imagined it would be, and everything she was not prepared for. Somewhere in the middle of it, he asks for her name. She tells him, Moran, without hesitating. The lie comes out smooth and easy, and she hates herself a little for how naturally it forms. He tells her his real name in return, just like that. No performance, no title. Just his name offered to a stranger in a dark room like it costs him nothing. She wishes he had not done that. She thinks about it while he is still there. If they were just two people using each other and planning to forget by morning, it would feel the way she told herself it would feel. Clean, uncomplicated. Something she chose for herself on her own terms. Marie wakes up and does not immediately know if she slept or simply lost consciousness from exhaustion. The room is still dim. Wachlin is asleep beside her. She looks at him for a long moment and thinks about everything this night was, and everything it can never become. Then she gets up quietly, dresses without making a sound, and walks to the door. She stops and looks back at him one last time. She thinks, thank you. Not out loud. Just in the part of herself. She will carry this with her for the rest of her life. Then she leaves. Back at the Harona estate, she sits on the edge of her bed when Eleni knocks. Eleni opens the door and immediately asks if she is all right. Marie tells her she will provide the dowry. Eleni says her name softly, like she is not sure she deserves to hear it said that way. Then Marie holds out the dress. The one Lariella gave her. The one that was chosen specifically for her with genuine warmth and real intention. She tells Eleni it is hers now. Eleni looks at it and then looks at her sister and does not know what to say. Marie thinks to herself that it is time. The bright red-haired girl steps forward into her future, and the plain brown-haired maid steps quietly aside. That is how it goes. 1 month later, back at El Mono Castle, two maids pass by the window outside the small table where Marie is sitting, and she hears every word. They are talking about Sir Wachlin and the woman he has been searching for without stopping for over a month. They say she must be extraordinary for a man like him, a man who has never once looked back at anyone, to be this relentless about finding her. They say they hope he does. Marie sits with her cup and thinks that it is not right at all. She is not extraordinary. She is completely ordinary. Then Lariella looks over at her and asks if she has heard about Sir Wachlin's search. Marie says somewhat. Lariella tells her she actually knows quite a bit about the woman. Her name is Maren, apparently. Red hair. A little taller than Lariella. By all accounts, her face and manner suggest she is a noblewoman, which is why Kais personally went to the Imperial Palace to check the noble registry. Marie's cup stops halfway to her mouth. She asks why Wachlin would go that far over one night. She realizes immediately that it came out more sharply than she intended. Lariella looks at her and says simply because he fell in love at first sight. Marie says, oh. She thinks about Alani's bright red hair and how Wachlin is obviously the type who prefers that kind of woman, and she is absolutely not that kind of woman, and none of this makes any sense. She says out loud that she wonders what he could have possibly liked so much. Lariella says her eyes. Marie goes very still. Lariella explains that Wachlin said he was drawn to her from the very first moment because her eyes were pure and sincere without a trace of deceit in them. The kind of eyes that make your heart feel clean just from looking into them. Lariella says she sounds like a genuinely good person and hopes to meet her soon. Marie sits there and thinks about how wrong he is. Those eyes lied to him the entire night. She gave him a false name. She sat across from him and made a deliberate decision to deceive him, and she has been lying by omission to Lariella ever since. When she asked for an advance on several years of wages, Lariella did not ask a single question. No reason required. No written promise. Just complete trust handed over without hesitation. And Marie used that trust to fund her sister's dowry so she could protect a secret that would devastate the person who gave it to her. Pure and sincere. He could not be more wrong about her. She tells herself it does not matter. Time will pass. He will eventually stop looking. She just needs to be careful not to cross his path, and eventually this whole thing will dissolve into something he files away and forgets. Men like Wachlin always forget. Meanwhile, Wachlin rides through the city on horseback, barely paying attention to where he is going. He keeps thinking about the conversation with Kais. They went through the entire noble registry and found no one named Maren, which means either she was never a noble or she gave him a name that was not hers. He thinks about how naturally she carried herself. The ease in how she moved. The way she held herself, even in a place entirely unfamiliar to her. It is hard to believe she was not raised in nobility. He thinks about that night and realizes he called her name over and over, and the whole time she was hearing a name that was not even hers, and he has no idea what she was thinking when he said it. His knight says something. Wachlin asks him to repeat it. The knight reminds him with visible patience that he placed an order with a weapons dealer here a month ago, and they need to decide whether to stop there first or the leather shop. Wachlin says the weapons dealer and refocuses. He wants to check the weight himself after last time. He looks out at the street as they ride, and then something catches his eye in the crowd. Red hair. His whole body reacts before his mind catches up. He thinks her name, the one she gave him, the one that was probably not even real. Maren. Wachlin is off his horse before he makes a conscious decision to move. He tells his knight to wait and pushes through the crowd toward the red hair. He calls her name. The woman turns around. It is not her. He stops breathing for a moment. The woman looks at him with mild concern and asks if something is the matter. He straightens up, apologizes, and says he mistook her for someone else. Then he notices the dress. Something about it pulls at his memory. He asks where she got it. She looks at him like the question is strange and says her older sister gave it to her. He asks who her sister is. She says Marie Hirona, third daughter of the Hirona family, currently serving the Duchess at Elmano Castle. She received the dress as a gift from the Duchess herself. Wachlin stands very still. Then he exhales slowly, and something between disbelief and recognition moves across his face. She was right in front of him the entire time, working in his cousin's house, knowing exactly who he was and exactly who he was looking for. And she said nothing. He turns and walks away without another word. The woman stares after him, wondering what just happened. Behind her, a man named Lucien Parker, eldest son of Count Parker and apparently Eleni's intended, appears and starts counting how many men have approached her today with thinly veiled jealousy that he is not bothering to veil at all. Eleni explains that the man clearly had business with her older sister and simply mistook her for someone else. Lucien asks how an Elmano man would even know her name. Eleni says he called her Maren, which was probably just him misremembering. Lucien asks pointedly how she already knew that was Wachlin Elmano if she barely knows him. Eleni looks at him and thinks about how he has been getting worse since the dowry was paid. More controlling, more suspicious, more like someone she did not sign up for. She tells him Wachlin is well known and she simply recognizes the name. Lucien asks if she is planning to keep men like him around as lovers once they are married. Eleni says he is the only one for her. Lucien says her friends told him otherwise. Everything stops. Lucien holds her shoulder and tells her calmly that her friends came to him willingly, with quite a few petty little details. Apparently, from the moment she arrived at his family home as a tutor, she had a plan. She had always intended to end up in his bed. He says he was almost fooled by her face. Almost. He pinches her cheek and tells her that once they are married, she will not take a single step outside the house without his permission. Eleni stands there and thinks about the life she was planning. Beautiful dresses, lavish parties, handsome lovers. That was the whole vision. Not a controlling husband, a disapproving countess, and a house she cannot leave. She says she is breaking off the engagement. Lucien laughs and reminds her that breaking the engagement means returning double the dowry already paid. The dowry that her sweet, naive sister scraped together with years of work. And by the way, he adds, turning down every proposal her sister ever received just to secure that dowry was quite a move. He wonders if her poor, innocent sister knows any of that part. Eleni goes pale. That night at Elmano Castle, Wachlin runs. He is moving through the halls with purpose, and the single thought of Marie Hirona is repeating in his head like something has finally clicked into place, and he cannot get there fast enough. He throws open the door to Kai's office and finds Kais and Lariella mid-kiss with Lariella on his lap. They both look startled. Lariella asks what is happening. Wachlin barely looks at either of them. He asks where Marie Hirona is. Lariella says she should be resting in her room. He asks which room. Lariella tells him and starts to ask why, but he is already gone. They look at each other and say nothing. In her room, Marie is lying on her bed when the knocking starts. It is urgent enough to make her sit up fast. She goes to the door, thinking about who would knock like that at this hour, and opens it. Wachlin is standing there, breathing hard and looking directly at her. She looks at him. He looks at her. The gray uniform. The brown hair. The face he has been passing in this house for however long without his brain making the connection it is making right now. And those eyes. The ones he told Kai about. The ones he said were pure and sincere without a trace of deceit in them. Looking back at him from behind a door in Elmano Castle. Marie Hirona. Right here the entire time. Wachlin steps into the room and closes the door behind him. He looks at her and exhales. He thinks about two versions of the same woman. One in a bright red dress, shoulders hunched, stepping timidly into a tavern for the first time in her life. The other, in a dull button-up uniform, head bowed, posture perfect, passing him in the hallway twice a week without a word. Hard to believe they are the same person, but then there are those eyes, and there is no question at all. He tells her that when he saw her at the tavern, he knew he had seen her somewhere before. He thinks about the day she stood in Kai's office with tears streaming down her face, defending her mistress without backing down, and then looked up, and those same eyes stared back at him, wide open. Completely honest. So sincere they did not hold even a trace of a lie, or so he thought. He tells her he believes she was the most honest woman he had ever met. Turns out she is a bold-faced liar. Marie says his name. He walks toward her and she steps back until she hits the wall. He asks if she has been avoiding him deliberately because she was afraid he would recognize her. Then he reaches up and pulls the pins from her hair, lets it fall around her shoulders, and brings his face close to hers and says, "It's nice to see her. Marianne." Marie's heart is pounding so hard she hiccups, then hiccups again, then keeps hiccuping at the absolute worst possible moment while he watches her. He thought he would be furious when he finally found her. He was ready to pour every bit of resentment he had been carrying for a month directly onto her the moment they met again. He is looking at her hiccuping against a wall, and none of that anger is anywhere he can find it. He asks if she would prefer water or something stronger. She says water, please. He takes both her hands and pins them gently to the wall, and tells her he thinks this will be far more effective. Then he kisses her, and just like that, the hiccups stop. When they pull apart, Marie asks if he is angry with her. He says he was right up until the moment she opened the door. Then everything just melted away the second he saw her face. She sighs against him with a relief she did not know she was holding and thinks about how he is not disappointed. He found out it was her, plain brown-haired, dull-uniformed Marie Hirona, and he is not disappointed at all. Then, from outside the door, a voice says, "Oh my goodness, it looks like it is true." They both freeze. Wachlin opens the door and finds Kais and Lariella standing in the hallway, looking extremely guilty and not even slightly apologetic. Lariella immediately starts explaining that she was just worried about Marie, and then trails off into the realization that Moran was Marie the entire time. Marie turns so red inside the room that she could probably be seen from the garden. Wachlin tells them he will explain everything later and to please leave. Kais clears his throat with tremendous formal energy and delivers a speech about the sacred duty of the highest-ranking noble in Baya Roman to uphold the chastity and decorum of unmarried noble ladies and the inviolable laws passed down through generations of the empire that simply cannot be overlooked in good conscience. Wachlin stares at him. He tells Kais he is sending an official marriage proposal first thing tomorrow morning, and in fact, he will deliver it himself in person, so they can go now. Marie spins around and asks him to please wait because this is extremely sudden and they have not even discussed anything, and she has her own circumstances that he does not know about yet. Wachlin picks her up. She shrieks. He closes the door and tells whoever is on the other side that if they touch the bell string today, he will rip every single one of them out of the walls. The door slams. Kais and Lariella look at each other in the hallway. Lariella says it looks like there will be another wedding at El Mano Castle soon. Kai says, judging by Wachlin's current behavior, he doubts the man will last through a standard 3-month engagement. They are both smiling. A month later, Lariella sits down to write to her brother. She tells René that exactly as Kais predicted, the wedding preparations for Wachlin and Marie are moving at a speed that is frankly alarming. After Wachlin learned everything about Marie's situation, he cornered Viscount and Viscountess Hirona and obtained their consent in a way that Lariella describes as less of a conversation and more of a statement of fact. He also tried to repay Lariella for the gold Marie borrowed. She told him to consider it a wedding gift. She thinks about Kais's suggestion to schedule the wedding on the same day as Alani's wedding to Lord Lucien Parker. Wachlin immediately understood what that meant and agreed without needing further convincing. Kais personally wrote every invitation by hand and pressed the official seal of the Elmano ducal house onto each one. The card read simply, "You are cordially invited to the wedding of Wachlin Elmano and Marie Hirona, signed by Duke Kais Elmano." On the day of Alani's wedding, the venue is empty. She stands alone in her dress with tears running down her face and thinks about what her sister did. Across the city, every guest who received an invitation chose the one with the Elmano seal. Lariella finishes her letter by noting that the only attendees at the Parker wedding were likely the immediate members of House Parker and House Hirona. She asks René if he does not think that is interesting. René reads the letter, looks at Marina, and says he thinks Lariella is starting to take after the Duke. Marina laughs and says she noticed that too. On the wedding day, the sun is out, the venue is full, and the decorations are exactly what Marie deserves after everything she spent years quietly enduring. Wachlin's relatives stand together near the front, one of them openly crying and saying that the brat finally did it. He is finally getting married. Kais and Lariella stand together watching with the particular satisfaction of two people who have been waiting for this longer than either of them would admit. The priest declares in the name of God that these two are now husband and wife. Wachlin slides a ring onto Marie's finger. They look at each other, then they kiss. And Marie Hirona, the most capable maid in the capital, the woman who gave everything away and asked for nothing in return, the woman with the pure and sincere eyes that could not hold a trace of deceit even when she was actively lying, finally gets to keep something entirely for herself. And with that, this beautiful story comes to an end. If you enjoyed it, please rate it on a scale of 1 to 10 inches the comments. Until next time, ciao.